Hi guys. Tonight we ease into a gentle drift through time, and you open your eyes to a frosty American morning in the early 1800s. The air is crisp enough to sting your cheeks, yet soft enough to promise comfort once you step closer to a warm fire. Frost clings to window panes like tiny crystals. A faint plume of chimney smoke curls upward in the half-light, and you can almost hear the slow pop and sigh of logs catching in the hearth. You stretch your fingers toward that imagined heat, already sinking into the mood of a world where Thanksgiving is familiar in spirit, but still far from the standardized holiday you know today. Before you wander too far into this quiet morning, here is your one reality check. If you actually woke up in 1805, wearing your modern pajamas, you probably would not survive this weather for more than a few minutes. The air is sharp, the floors are cold, the quilts are heavy, and insulation is more of a wish than a certainty. Still, you settle into the cozy fantasy of being here, letting your mind roam through a slower and steadier century. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, tell me your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights. You step forward into the glow of early American Thanksgiving. You feel rough wooden planks under your feet, each one cool and slightly warped from years of seasonal changes. Outside, you hear a rooster, who clearly has no sense of personal boundaries, crowing much earlier than you would prefer. A thin streak of sunlight cracks across the floorboards, making the dust motes shimmer in their lazy drift. The household around you is just beginning to stir, and you can sense that this day carries a special rhythm. People in the 1800s celebrated Thanksgiving differently depending on where they lived and what they valued, and you are about to glimpse the holiday while it still shifts and evolves, not yet locked into a standardized national ritual. A mainstream historical fact settles into your mind as you breathe in the faint scent of cold morning air. Thanksgiving in the early 1800s was not yet an official national holiday. It varied wildly by region, with New England families observing it regularly and people in other states treating it as an occasional custom. This day is shaped more by local tradition than by national decree, and you feel that looseness as you move. You wrap a shawl around your shoulders and step outside. The temperature bites gently, the way a cat might nip you to signal that you are welcome but should behave yourself. Smoke from nearby houses drifts through the still morning, mingling with the earthy scent of damp leaves. A dog trots past your feet, wagging slowly like it is also half asleep. The holiday mood here is subtle, nothing like the loud countdowns you know from modern celebrations. Instead, the day begins with chores. Always chores. Always something to carry, sweep, milk, mend, or haul. You are part of a world where comfort must be chased, not expected. You glance toward the small barn, where a handful of cows push their steamy breath into the cold air. A quirky tidbit emerges. Some households in the early 1800s treated Thanksgiving morning as a perfect time to secretly swap small items with neighbors, using remote corners of shared fields, a kind of unofficial good luck exchange. You imagine someone creeping quietly to leave a carved spoon or a clutch of late apples under a stone marker, hoping the neighbor would find it later with a smile. Behind these gentle details, you also notice that scholars still puzzle over certain parts of the holiday's early character. Historians still argue whether the Thanksgiving of the 1800s leaned more toward solemn religious reflection or toward cheerful, social indulgence. You sense both possibilities in the air, a quiet reverence in the way families prepare their tables, mixed with an eagerness for food, conversation, and warmth. You keep walking along a packed dirt path, the cold earth crunching under your shoes. The color of the sky deepens gradually, from pale blue to something softer and more golden as the sun climbs. Nearby houses stand far apart by modern standards, each one surrounded by fields or small patches of woodland. When you inhale, you can smell smoke, churned earth, and something faintly sweet drifting from a distant kitchen. Your breath leaves a pale cloud in front of you. A man in a thick wool jacket lifts his hand in greeting. He moves slowly, not because he is unfriendly, but because cold mornings require a certain economy of motion. You return the gesture, noticing how many layers he wears. Clothing is precious, handmade, and often repaired again and again until it becomes a patchwork of memories. A horse pulls a cart past you along the road, hooves thudding in a calm, rhythmic pattern. The horse gives you a sidelong glance, as if judging your level of preparedness for this century. You cannot blame it. You are clearly new here. As you make your way back inside the nearest house, the warmth hits your face like a soft wave. A fire crackles steadily, sending a comforting glow across the room. An iron kettle hangs near the flames, rattling faintly as steam builds. Someone has already started making a simple morning meal, maybe corn mush or leftover bread softened with warm milk. You smell the grainy sweetness rising from the pot. In this era, the day's celebration is not yet about parades, football, or mass-produced decorations. Instead, it feels like a carefully orchestrated gathering of sensory comforts. You watch a woman sweep the hearth in slow, practiced motions, stirring up a faint wooden scent from the bristles. She hums a little tune that is half memory, half instinct. Thanksgiving in the 1800s is stitched together from rituals like this, repeated year after year until they feel inevitable. Children whisper somewhere in the next room, their voices carrying a mixture of excitement and mischief. You step closer and hear them debating whether they will get extra molasses today, or whether Uncle Nathan will do his strange whistle trick that always makes the baby laugh. Their joy softens the edges of the cold world outside. You let your hands drift along a rough wooden tabletop. The grain feels warm and familiar, shaped by years of touch. A single candle stands ready for later, its wick slightly crooked as if it has been handled by someone with cold fingers. Near it lies a folded piece of paper with a simple verse, copied in careful handwriting, perhaps something to be read aloud later, as a blessing. You step toward a window and look outside again, where a faint breeze stirs the last stubborn leaves clinging to the trees. The world feels old, calm, and strangely alive in its quietness. The morning invites you to take things slowly. The day has only begun, yet you already sense that Thanksgiving in this century is less about big statements and more about layered moments. The soft thud of chopped wood, the scent of rising dough, the murmur of family voices, and the unhurried pulse of a world that has its own ways of marking gratitude. You breathe in, letting the smoky warmth of the room settle into your chest. The day stretches ahead of you, full of sounds, scents, small labors, and shared comforts that you will follow step by step, never rushed, always drifting. You ease deeper into the household, letting the warmth of the hearth settle into your shoulders. Morning light grows softer and steadier, brushing across the modest room with a pale golden tint. You can hear quiet activity unfolding around you, the kind of gentle bustle that transforms an ordinary morning into something charged with anticipation. Thanksgiving in the early 1800s begins not with dramatic fanfare, but with a long, steady sequence of tasks that centers the home. You feel yourself drifting through these motions, absorbing every texture and scent. The first thing you notice is the smell of wood smoke, thick and comforting. It hangs in the air like a familiar blanket, weaving through every corner of the house. A fire sits proudly in the hearth, sending small sparks into the dim room, while a cast-iron crane supports kettles that sway slightly as the boiling water trembles inside them. You can feel the heat radiating toward you, warming your cheeks as you stand close. The hearth is the center of this world, the place where meals begin, tools dry, stories land, and everyone tries to thaw their fingers at least a few dozen times each day. A woman moves quietly nearby, rearranging logs with an iron poker. Each log settles with a muffled clunk, sending out a burst of scent that smells like oak and last summer. She wipes her hands on her apron and gives you a nod, neither rushed nor surprised. In her world, you are simply another pair of hands drifting through the morning, someone who understands the slow gravity of domestic work. A mainstream historical fact drifts into your thoughts. In most early American households, the hearth served as the stove, the heater, and sometimes even the light source, long before cooking ranges became common. Thanksgiving preparations depended on that open fire, which demanded constant feeding and careful control. Anyone tending it needed a sense for heat, the way musicians need an ear for pitch. You watch as she lifts a heavy pot with a practiced grip. The iron feels cold at first, then scalding near the bottom where steam curls up in long ribbons. She pours hot water into a basin for washing vegetables later. A faint hiss rises as the hot liquid touches cooler metal and the cloud of steam hits your face. It smells faintly of minerals and hearthstone. In the corner of the room, a man checks on a bucket of apples. Some are slightly bruised, others glossy and bright. He turns each one carefully, selecting the best for cooking and the slightly damaged ones for immediate snacking or cider pressing. While he works, he hums a little tune that blends into the wooden textures around him. You feel the slow, meditative rhythm of a home that takes pride in preparation. Your attention shifts to the walls lined with shelves. The jars of dried herbs, strings of onions, and folded cloths speak of a life where nothing goes to waste. The pantry holds cornmeal, dried beans, and salted meats, each ingredient waiting its turn for the celebration ahead. You run your fingertips along a wooden bowl filled with flour, noticing how cold and powdery it feels. The flour clings to your skin in ghostly prints, soft as fine snow. Near the window, an older woman kneels over a crate of root vegetables. Carrots, turnips, and potatoes sit in a tangled heap, leaving earthy streaks on her hands. She taps each one lightly, listening for firmness, and sets aside any that feel too soft or smell faintly wrong. Her movements are slow and methodical, like she is tending to small living creatures rather than produce. You find yourself matching her rhythm, breathing with her pace, letting the quiet settle over you. A quirky tidbit surfaces like a forgotten note tucked in an apron pocket. In some regions during the 1800s, people set aside the best-looking root vegetables to carve whimsical shapes in the days leading up to Thanksgiving. These vegetable figures were sometimes used to amuse children or decorate the kitchen mantel before being cooked later. You imagine a turnip with a crooked smile perched above the fire, watching over the morning chores. You step closer to the hearth again, feeling an intimate tug from the glow. A black pot, suspended by a hook, rocks gently from the simmering inside. The woman tending it explains softly that she is warming broth saved from a previous meal. The scent rises in thin waves of salt, herbs, and memories. Every household treasures stock like this, and you sense how these simple ingredients anchor the entire feast to come. Children scamper into the room, their feet pattering across the wooden floor with a rhythm full of excitement and clumsy energy. One clutches a wooden toy horse, its edges smooth from years of handling. Another carries a small bundle of dried corn husks, eager to help peel them for the celebratory dishes. Their breaths are visible in short, pale puffs, and they chatter with the kind of delight that only arises when a day feels special. As you watch the room buzz, another question rises in your mind. What exactly defines Thanksgiving at this point in history? Scholars still puzzle over this, and some historians still argue whether early 1800s families leaned more into religious observances or social pleasures during the holiday. You sense both influences here. A Bible rests on the table, bookmarked for a reading later, but the laughter, the food preparations, and the comfortable chatter speak just as loudly. You step over to the table covered in wooden utensils. Knives gleam faintly in the dim light, their blades sharpened by hand. A set of pewter plates waits patiently, cool to the touch. Beside them lies a braided trivet, woven from corn husks, ready to protect the wood from a hot kettle later. The texture of the husks feels smooth and slightly waxy under your fingers. Someone stirs a bowl of dough with a wooden spoon, working slowly until the mixture grows thick and heavy. You hear the dull thuds of the spoon against the bowl, each one a reminder of how much effort goes into even the smallest parts of a feast. The smell of rising yeast floats toward you, mingling with the deeper notes of smoke and broth. A cat wanders in through a cracked door. It stretches luxuriously, then curls up near the fire, as if claiming the warmest spot is a birthright. You smile at its confidence. Even animals sense that this day holds more comfort than most. You take a slow, deep breath, feeling the mixture of scents settle into your senses. Standing here, you realize how central the hearth and household atmosphere were to Thanksgiving celebrations in the early 1800s. The day flows from the fire itself, from the steady labor of hands that tend flames, knead dough, polish plates, and create the world of comfort that everyone will gather around later. For now, though, the work continues quietly. No one rushes. The holiday does not demand haste. It unfolds at a pace guided by fire, food, and gentle expectation. You feel yourself absorbed into that rhythm, moving as the room moves, soaking in the warmth and the quiet hum of a home preparing for gratitude. You step outside again, letting the door fall shut behind you with a gentle wooden thump. The morning has brightened, though the cold still clings to your clothes like a reminder that comfort always requires a little effort in the 1800s. You follow the path that leads toward the village market, ready to gather the ingredients that will shape the Thanksgiving meal. Your boots sink slightly into the mud, and each step adds a thin layer of earth to the soles. The smell of damp soil rises into the air, mixing with the faint sweetness of fallen leaves that have soaked overnight. As you walk, the world around you feels both quiet and busy. Birds chatter in the leafless branches, their calls sharp and bright. A pair of children runs past you, woolens flapping as they race down the road with the kind of boundless energy only kids seem to possess. Their laughter echoes lightly across the fields. You shake your head softly, amused by how contagious their excitement feels. Ahead, the market road becomes livelier. Wagons creak under the weight of produce, firewood, and poultry. Farmers nudge their horses forward, mumbling encouragement as hooves clatter across uneven ground. The crisp air carries the smell of hay, damp canvas, and hints of spices from merchants who arrived before dawn. You pull your shawl a little tighter and step into the flow of activity. A note recorded in many early 19th century diaries drifts into your awareness. People often travelled several miles on foot or by wagon just to reach a local market, especially before Thanksgiving. These trips were as much a social ritual as a practical necessity. You sense that immediately. Everyone greets everyone. Neighbours call out names. Strangers nod warmly. The day feels stitched together by human contact as much as by commerce. You pause near a stall where a man arranges late-season carrots into neat bundles. The colours are muted by cold weather, but each carrot carries the earthy scent of storage cellars and the heavy soil it once grew in. The vendor lifts one proudly, pointing out its straight shape as if it were an achievement. You smile, because somehow it is. Every vegetable in this era represents work, weather, luck, and a bit of hope. Just a few steps away, a woman sells herbs tied with string. Sage, thyme, and dried mint fill the air with fragrances that feel warm despite the chill. You brush your fingers across a bundle of dried rosemary. It crackles softly, releasing a sharp pine-like scent that lingers in the air. The merchant tells you it is excellent for roasting meats, then winks as if sharing a secret too good to hide. You wander farther along the market lane, absorbing every sound and scent. A pair of men barter loudly over a bag of flour. A young girl sells small paper packets of cloves and cinnamon, their warm aroma curling around her small stall like invisible ribbons. A potter displays earthenware bowls, their surfaces smooth and cool beneath your touch. The entire marketplace feels alive, vibrant, and strangely cozy. While you observe this colourful scene, a lesser-known historical curiosity nudges your thoughts. Some families in the 1800s chose ingredients for Thanksgiving not only based on availability but also on personal superstitions. A few believed that buying the first pumpkin they touched would bring luck, while others insisted that a turkey should be selected only after 3 slow circles around the seller's stall. You imagine someone performing that little ritual now, trying not to look suspicious while walking loops in the mud. You continue toward the poultry section of the market, where the clucking and fluttering of birds fills the air. Turkeys, geese, ducks, and even a few chickens wait in wooden cages. Their feathers puff and ruffle as they respond to the crowd. A boy tends to the cages, offering nervous apologies whenever a bird flaps too wildly. You crouch down, watching a plump turkey stare back at you with unblinking eyes. The bird makes a low sound that feels more judgmental than grateful. Nearby, 2 women debate loudly but playfully over the merits of goose versus turkey. Their laughter spills into the air, drawing curious glances. The exchange reminds you that food is more than sustenance today. It carries tradition, pride, and a sense of identity shaped by family history. At another stall, a baker sells loaves of dense, dark bread. The crusts look thick enough to withstand cold weather. You squeeze one gently and feel the warmth still trapped inside, suggesting it was baked only hours ago. The baker offers you a thin slice with a smear of butter, and the taste is simple yet deeply comforting. It melts on your tongue with a soft saltiness that lingers. You glance around again and notice how the market reflects the geography of early American communities. In coastal towns, fishers might bring oysters. In mountainous regions, people trade apples, nuts, or smoked meats. Each stall feels like a tiny map of local survival. A question begins to rise in your mind, one shared among researchers who study this period. Some specialists still disagree on how much regional differences shaped the character of Thanksgiving during the early 19th century. You can feel the puzzle forming. Was the holiday truly unified in spirit, or was it a patchwork of local customs that only later merged into something national? The uncertainty hangs gently, like a shrug from the past. You purchase a small bundle of sage and a modest piece of cured pork, then continue walking. The market gradually thins as you move into a quieter lane, lined with cottages. Smoke curls from chimneys, and you hear the clatter of someone chopping wood in the distance. The cold air sharpens your senses. Every smell, every sound seems to carry extra weight. You pass a stream that runs along the road, its surface rippling with pale reflections of the sky. A man kneels by the water, rinsing a basket of apples. The icy water sprays lightly as he lifts them out, and he shakes off the droplets with a practiced motion. He nods a greeting, and you nod back before continuing your pace. As you near a small wooden bridge, the breeze picks up, carrying the scent of pine resin and cold metal from wagon wheel rims. You rest your hand on the bridge railing. The wood feels worn, smooth where countless hands have touched it. You look down at the water moving below, carrying fallen leaves like tiny boats. A cluster of women approach from the other side, balancing baskets filled with cloth bundles. You hear snippets of their conversation. They mention the cold snap, the price of molasses, and the hope that this year's Thanksgiving meal will outshine last year's. Their voices mix with the crunch of gravel under their shoes, creating a rhythm that feels timeless. You turn back toward home with your modest purchases wrapped carefully in cloth. The road feels different now. The marketplace scents cling to you. The excitement of preparation hums in your chest. Your fingers feel colder, but your spirit feels warmer. As you walk, you appreciate how every journey to the market is part of the holiday itself. The effort, the choices, the conversations, and the shared anticipation all build the emotional foundation of Thanksgiving in the 1800s. The day is not a single feast but a chain of moments. The muddy boots, the laughter, the bartering, the smell of fresh bread, the weight of a basket filled with possibility. You step through the doorway and return to the hearth glow waiting inside, and without needing to say a word, you know the next stage of preparation is ready to begin. You slip back into the kitchen, letting the warmth wrap around you like a familiar embrace. The air feels thicker now, full of rising scents and soft clattering sounds. It is still early, yet the room hums with steady purpose. Thanksgiving in the early 1800s may not have had television, timers, or electric stoves, but the choreography inside these kitchens would impress any modern cook. You find yourself drawn toward the brick oven like a moth to a gentle flame. The oven sits low and wide, its mouth yawning open as someone feeds fresh wood into its glowing center. The stacked bricks glow a muted red inside, radiating heat into the room. You feel it on your face, a slow, enveloping warmth that makes you instinctively step closer. A long-handled peel rests nearby, dusty with flour. The surface of the peel feels smooth and cool when you touch it, its wooden grain shaped by years of use. A woman kneels beside the open hearth, coaxing a small flame under an iron pot balanced on a trivet. Her sleeves are rolled to her elbows, revealing arms dusted with flour, as though the ingredients have tried to claim her as one of their own. She stirs the pot with a slow, circular motion that seems almost hypnotic. The aroma rising from it is a mix of onions, herbs, and something richly savory. You inhale deeply and feel your stomach give a hopeful flutter. The brick oven pops softly as moisture trapped in the wood escapes into the heat. A faint crackle echoes in the room. You glance toward a line of dough-covered bowls sitting near the wall. Each one rests under a cloth, slowly expanding with the warm air. The dough looks soft and slightly shiny, pushing gently against the fabric. Someone lifts one of the cloths to peek inside, then smiles with quiet satisfaction. The bread will be ready soon. A detail preserved in many old housekeeping journals drifts into your mind. Families in the early 1800s often rose before sunrise to heat their brick ovens for baking. The thick walls required hours to reach the perfect temperature, which meant timing was everything. If the oven ran too hot, the crust burned, too cool, and the bread stayed heavy and pale. You sense how much experience and intuition filled these kitchens. Thermometers were rare luxuries. Most cooks relied on their palms, their eyes, and the sound of the fire itself. Someone hands you a bowl of chopped apples, the pieces dusted with cinnamon and nutmeg. You can feel the chill still clinging to them from the outdoor storage crates. The scent rising from the bowl is crisp and sweet, a promise of pies that will perfume the entire house later. You stir the apples gently, watching the spices cling to the moist surfaces. A soft sigh escapes you without your permission. On a nearby table, a young girl works with focused determination. Her hands shape small lumps of dough into something resembling biscuits. The dough sticks to her fingers. She scrapes it off with a tiny laugh, then tries again. Her concentration is fierce and adorable in equal measure. Her grandmother stands beside her, offering murmured encouragement, and little tips whispered like wisdom passed through generations. As you observe the scene, a little piece of lesser-known culinary lore slips into your thoughts. Some households believed that placing a small stone in the brick oven before baking pies helped stabilize the temperature. The stone supposedly absorbed excess heat and released it slowly, though the logic behind it was never universally accepted. You spot a flat, smooth stone resting near the oven door now. Someone must be following that old belief today. You move toward another corner where vegetables wait in neat piles. Squash sliced into thick crescents, onions peeled clean, potatoes washed until they shine. A cutting board holds a heap of chopped celery, its sharp, grassy aroma mixing with the sweeter notes of roasted pumpkin that waft through the air. A large mortar and pestle sit ready to crush spices for stuffing. When you lift the pestle, it feels heavy and cold, like a tool meant to shape flavor with authority. Two women discuss the seasoning for the turkey in low, steady voices. One favors sage-heavy stuffing, the other swears by a mixture of thyme, parsley, and a little molasses. Their friendly disagreement is timeless. Food choices always attract opinions, especially on days like this. Their conversation blends into the clinking of spoons against bowls and the low rumble of boiling pots. You lean closer to the brick oven and notice how the heat makes the air shimmer. A loaf of bread sits inside now, its crust beginning to rise and crack slightly. The scent of baking bread is enough to make your eyes close for a moment. You feel the warmth, the yeasty sweetness, the depth of the baking air soak into your senses. It is almost meditative. As you open your eyes, another thought touches your mind. Researchers who study early American cooking still hold differing interpretations about how strictly recipes were followed during holiday meals. Some argue that cooks adhered closely to inherited methods, while others believe most families improvised freely, adapting dishes to whatever the season offered. Watching this kitchen, you can feel both truths present at once. The cooks follow certain motions with ritual precision, yet they also substitute ingredients without hesitation if necessity demands it. A man enters carrying a fresh pail of milk. The metal clinks softly as he sets it near the hearth. Steam rises from the pail's rim. He takes a ladle and pours the milk into a pot destined for custard. The scent of warm milk fills the room. Subtle and comforting, he stirs it slowly, watching the surface ripple in the shifting light. A woman nearby crushes cloves with the mortar and pestle. The cloves release a warm, biting fragrance that climbs into the air like a tiny fire of its own. Her movements are deliberate, almost ceremonial. When she finishes, she tips the fragrant powder into a bowl waiting for the pie filling. On the far side of the room, a boy plucks feathers from a small fowl with surprising efficiency. The feathers fall softly into a wooden bucket like pale snowflakes. His expression is serious. He works carefully, occasionally pausing to warm his hands near the hearth. You notice the floor beneath your feet. It is slightly uneven, worn by countless steps taken during countless holidays. Each board seems to hold memories of celebrations past. You shuffle your feet lightly and feel a faint vibration from someone chopping herbs nearby. Steam rises from every direction. Pots murmur on the fire, kettles hiss, dough rises, spices crack open, and laughter threads through it all. The kitchen feels like a living creature, pulsing with warmth, rhythm, and anticipation. You find yourself sinking into its calm frenzy, letting your senses ride the flow of preparation. Someone hands you a small spoonful of warm broth to taste. The flavor is deep and layered, a careful blend of herbs, meat drippings, and thyme. It lingers on your tongue long after you swallow, leaving a cozy warmth in your chest. As you stand in this kitchen filled with heat and harmony, you sense how much of Thanksgiving's heart begins here. The preparation itself becomes an act of gratitude. The chopping, the stirring, the tending of fire, the small disagreements over seasoning, the shared laughter, the quiet pride in each dish. These moments build the emotional foundation long before the feast reaches the table. You watch the bread rise. You hear the fire crackle. You breathe the cinnamon-rich air. You feel the day taking its shape through every careful motion. And as the kitchen continues its warm, deliberate dance, you know the feast is blooming from this very room. You step away from the brick oven's glow and move toward a smaller side room where the main event of the holiday quietly waits. The centerpiece of Thanksgiving in the 19th century is not yet fixed in the national imagination, so when you turn the corner, you are never entirely sure what you will find. Sometimes it is a turkey, sometimes a goose, sometimes something that makes you pause for a second and ask if you have stepped into an alternate culinary universe. Whatever appears, you feel the weight of tradition settling around you as gently as the cold air that follows from the doorway. The room is cooler than the kitchen. A small window lets in soft daylight, enough to paint pale stripes across the wooden table. On the table lies a plump turkey, its feathers already removed, its pale skin waiting for the final stages of preparation. Next to it sits a goose, sleeker and darker, like a rival candidate interviewing for the same job. A pair of hens rest nearby, smaller, but no less important. It becomes clear that the family has options, and options in this century speak volumes. A note often mentioned in regional food accounts drifts across your thoughts. Many households during this era treated turkey as a desirable but not absolutely required dish for Thanksgiving. Its availability depended on hunting success, local wildlife, and sheer luck. As you stand here, you sense that same mixture of practicality and hope shaping the meal. The man of the household enters with confident stride, wiping his hands on a cloth. He lifts the turkey, testing its weight with a practiced grip. The bird looks hefty enough to feed a large table, perhaps even provide leftovers for pies and stews over the next week. He nods to himself, as if approving a well-timed seasonal gift. Beside him, a woman inspects the goose. Her brow furrows in thoughtful concentration. Geese roast beautifully with crisp, flavorful skin, but their fat content demands more careful tending. She pricks the skin gently with a small knife to check the firmness. The blade gleams faintly in the slanted light. You watch her hands move with steady precision. On a nearby shelf lies a hunting bag, still carrying a faint woodland scent. As you step closer, a vague memory shared in many oral histories surfaces in your mind. Some families relied heavily on wild game during the cold season, and Thanksgiving occasionally featured animals like venison, rabbit, or even pigeon pies. You picture a rustic holiday feast, built around whatever the forest offered, shaped as much by chance encounters in the woods as by recipes passed down the generations. A girl enters, carrying a bowl of herbs and vegetables. She sets it beside the turkey and begins stripping leaves from the stems of late-season sage. The leaves release a soft evergreen scent when crushed between her fingers. You can almost imagine the aroma, as it will mingle with roasting meat later today, filling the house and drifting out onto the cold evening air. The discussion regarding which bird will become the centerpiece grows livelier. The man prefers the turkey, proud of its size and presence. The woman leans toward the goose, charmed by its rich flavor. Their conversation flows with warmth rather than tension, as though the decision itself is part of the holiday ritual. You sense that this choice defines not only the taste of the meal but also a little piece of family identity. While listening, a small and rather amusing piece of food lore slips into your thoughts. Some rural families in the early 19th century believed that a goose roasted on Thanksgiving predicted the fortune of winter. If the skin blistered evenly, it signaled mild weather ahead. If parts turned dark too quickly, people whispered that a harsh freeze might follow. You glance at the goose, imagining it holding a secret meteorological message tucked beneath each feather. As the adults continue debating, another thought stirs quietly at the back of your mind. Those who study culinary traditions still express different interpretations about how early American families selected the holiday bird. A few researchers emphasize economic reasons, suggesting people simply cooked whatever animal they could afford or catch. Others argue that cultural preference shaped the decision, with certain families clinging to goose because it echoed European customs. The uncertainty hangs softly in the room, like a question without urgency. The woman eventually sets her hands on her hips, giving the turkey one final appraising look. The man raises an eyebrow. Then, without any dramatic announcement, they reach a quiet agreement. The turkey will take center stage. The goose, however, will not be forgotten. It will be roasted too, destined for the next day or perhaps even for neighbors who could use a hearty dish. Nothing in this time is wasted or dismissed lightly. The young girl works quickly now. She tosses chopped onions, celery, and herbs into a wooden bowl, mixing them with breadcrumbs that were dried on the hearth overnight. The bowl smells bright and savory, a blend of familiar notes that prickle your senses. When she squeezes a handful, it clumps softly, ready to be packed into the waiting bird. She glances up and smiles shyly as you watch, proud of her role in this important step. A man at the far counter sharpens a knife with slow, practiced motions. Each pass across the whetstone creates a soft whispering sound that blends with the murmured conversation. The blade soon gleams with a cold shine. He tests its edge with a gentle tap of his thumb, then nods with quiet approval. Someone else holds the turkey steady. They begin cleaning the cavity, rinsing it with fresh water and patting it dry with cloths. The skin feels slightly cool and smooth beneath your fingertips when they invite you to help. It is a moment that ties you more deeply to the rhythm of the day. These hands have prepared countless birds before, and their confidence guides you. Once the interior is clean, the girl passes forward the bowl of stuffing. The mixture smells warm even before cooking. Sage and onion rise first, followed by soft hints of melted butter. The woman spoons the mixture inside the turkey, packing it carefully but not too tightly. Too much pressure, and the bird cooks unevenly. Her movements flow with the ease of someone who learned the skill from a mother who learned from her mother before her. When the stuffing is finished, the man rubs the exterior with salt and a scattering of dried herbs. His palms glide across the surface, coating the skin in a thin layer that will crisp to golden perfection later. A faint sheen forms on the turkey under the kitchen light. The goose receives its own seasoning. The cook pricks tiny holes in the skin so the excess fat will melt and baste the meat as it cooks. She sprinkles a bit of pepper and a soft drizzle of molasses, explaining with a small grin that it helps the skin brown evenly. You can almost taste the promise in her voice. Nearby, a pot of broth simmers gently. The cook dips a ladle in and pours a thin stream over the turkey. It hisses faintly as the liquid touches the cool skin. Aromatic steam puffs upward, curling into the air like a blessing. You feel the room settling into a deep sense of focus. The choice has been made. The food is prepared. Soon the brick oven will embrace the turkey and the goose, transforming them slowly into the centerpiece of a feast, shaped by tradition, family memory, and many hands working together. As the final herbs are added and the birds are carried toward the glowing oven, you sense how this moment binds everyone in the house. Thanksgiving has not yet reached the shape you know in the modern world, but its heart beats strongly here, in the act of choosing the meal, preparing it with care, and sharing the quiet pride that comes before cooking begins. You breathe the herb-rich air, feel the warmth of the hearth at your back, and watch the turkey slide into the brick oven with a soft crackle of anticipation. The day continues to unfold, and you move with it, carried forward by the gentle rhythm of a world preparing to gather around a shared table. You drift back into the kitchen just as the warm fragrance of baking bread begins to weave through the air in thicker, sweeter ribbons. The turkey rests inside the brick oven, crackling softly as heat begins its slow work, yet your attention is pulled toward a different table now. Here lies the true artistry of many households in the 1800s. The pies, not just a dessert, but a kind of edible storytelling. Each region, each family, and sometimes each individual baker leaves a signature in the crusts and fillings. You step closer, drawn in by the scent of apples, spices, and something faintly toasted. The table is cluttered in a comforting way. Bowls of chopped apples glisten with early morning freshness. A crock of pumpkin puree sits in muted shades of orange. A small dish holds dark, sticky molasses ready to be drizzled. Jars of dried spices wait patiently, their corks slightly stained from years of use. And at the center of it all rests a wooden rolling pin, polished smooth by the hands of at least 3 generations. A well-documented observation from New England cookbooks flickers through your thoughts. Apple pies were often considered essential at Thanksgiving, so common that a table without one might seem incomplete. The idea makes sense as you watch a woman fold sugar into the apples, her movements so practiced that she never measures, yet always seems to know exactly how much sweetness the day requires. She presses the rolling pin into a ball of dough. The dough squishes softly, its surface turning silky as she rolls it thinner and thinner. You notice faint streaks of cold butter embedded inside. Those streaks will turn into delicate flakes when baked, the kind of detail that transforms an ordinary pie into a memory that lingers. As she continues working, a faintly amusing bit of lesser-known kitchen folklore floats into your mind. Some families believed that singing while rolling pie crust helped keep the dough tender, as though music softened not just hearts but gluten. You glance at the woman. She is humming gently, a drifting melody that blends with the crackle of the oven. Perhaps there is some old wisdom in the idea after all. A young boy watches her intently, elbows on the table, chin resting on his hands. He has been assigned the very important task of sprinkling spices when the time comes. His small fingers tap the edge of the bowl eagerly as he waits. When someone asks what he wants in the pie this year, he proudly lists cinnamon, nutmeg, and what he calls a pinch of patience. The adults laugh, not at him, but with him, because the phrase fits perfectly. Pumpkin, apple, cranberry, mince, custard, and sometimes something more unusual depending on the region all appear on this table. Each represents a different corner of American life in the 19th century. Coastal families might make pies with dried berries soaked overnight. Farm families lean toward hearty squash pies flavored with molasses. Urban households experiment with spices that travel in by ship. You feel as though you are watching a map take shape, each pie a point of origin. As ingredients shift across the table, an ongoing discussion among food historians echoes faintly in your mind. Some experts hold that mince pies were central to Thanksgiving in earlier decades, while others argue that pumpkin pies gradually pushed them aside as the preferred symbol of the feast. The debate remains unresolved, resting comfortably in the hazy space between memory and tradition. You sense the uncertainty, but also find that it adds charm rather than confusion. The older woman gestures for you to help with the pumpkin mixture. She hands you a wooden spoon coated in a creamy orange swirl. The mixture feels thick but smooth, speckled with spices that release waves of warmth into the air. You stir gently, watching the surface ripple like velvet. The aroma makes the back of your throat tingle, a promise of sweetness mixed with earthy undertones. Nearby, someone ladles cranberry filling into a dish. The berries pop softly as they burst, releasing a tart scent that cuts through the richness of the room like a bright thread of color. The mixture soon glows a deep ruby red, and you find yourself mesmerized by its jewel-like sheen. The crusts continue to form beneath busy hands. Some are simple, pressed into tin plates with careful fingers. Others become lattices, woven like delicate fences that allow steam to escape during baking. A few are adorned with tiny pastry leaves or braided edges. You run a fingertip along one of the decorative borders. The dough is cool, slightly elastic, and dusted with enough flour to leave a pale print on your skin. Someone asks the boy to sprinkle cinnamon over the apple filling. He does so with great ceremony, pinching the spice between his fingers and letting it fall like tiny brown snowflakes. When he finishes, he sniffs his hands with pride and announces that he smells like the holiday itself. The adults smile again, and you can feel the warmth of that small joy ripple through the room. A woman brushes beaten egg over a crust, giving it a glossy sheen that will turn golden in the heat of the oven. She works quickly, swiping the brush lightly across the dough. The crust seems to glow even before baking. On a different table rests a pie tin filled with a mixture of raisins, chopped apples, suet, and spices. This is mince pie, dense and fragrant. You inhale its warm, spiced scent and feel a wave of nostalgia for a food you may never have actually tasted. Its aroma is that evocative. You help carry the first finished pie toward the brick oven. The glow inside seems to welcome the dish, warming your hands as you reach forward. When the pie slides onto the oven floor, a brief puff of heat rushes up, carrying with it the combined scents of turkey, bread, and rising pastry. You feel a quiet thrill inside your chest. Another pie follows, then another. Soon the oven holds several dishes, each at different stages of the same delicious transformation. The air thickens with sweetness, spice, and anticipation. Back at the table, a young girl rolls the last scraps of dough into a small personal tart for herself. She tucks a single slice of apple in the center and folds the dough around it. Her smile is shy but bright. Her grandmother pats her shoulder, whispering something that makes the child glow with pride. You return to your earlier spot near the hearth. The kitchen now feels like a symphony building toward a warm crescendo. Steam swirls from pots, crusts glisten, spices drift. Every breath you take carries a new layer of aroma. It becomes clear that pies are far more than dessert in this century. They are markers of place, memory, and lineage. They remind people where they came from, who taught them to bake, and how the flavors of the land shape their families' stories. Watching these pies take shape, you feel you are witnessing history, not through grand events, but through the quiet, tender acts that sustain everyday life. As the last pie is set aside to cool, you sense the entire room taking a slow, satisfied breath. The kitchen hums with accomplishment. The holiday is growing richer by the hour. You inhale deeply, tasting cinnamon and roasted squash on the air. The pies cool on the windowsill, their surfaces gleaming softly in the fading light. The moment rests gently in your senses, warm and full, guiding you toward whatever the day will reveal next. You move from the kitchen toward the large main room of the house, following the gentle hum of voices and the soft scrape of furniture being shifted across the floor. The warmth of the hearth follows you, but the room ahead has its own character, shaped by the anticipation of a feast that will gather everyone under one roof. When you step inside, You see the table already stretching farther than it usually does, extended by sturdy wooden boards laid across barrels and spare stands. It looks slightly uneven, yet full of charm, like a stage built for memories rather than perfection. Sunlight from a narrow window spills across the planks, revealing their scratches and history. Each mark tells a quiet story. Someone once carved initials into the corner. Another mark shows where a candle dripped years ago, leaving a hardened trail now smoothed by time. You run your hand along the wood and feel its cool, slightly textured surface. The grain catches your fingertips, as if reminding you that this table has seen many seasons. A detail frequently mentioned in household accounts rises gently into your thoughts. Many families in the early 1800s did not own a single large dining table. Instead, they improvised by adding boards or joining smaller tables together whenever gatherings took place. You see that creativity here. A long cloth is draped across the boards to hide the mismatched alignment. It softens the look, turning a practical solution into something almost festive. Around the room, chairs sit in varying states of readiness. Some are tall and straight-backed, polished by years of careful hands. Others are simple stools with uneven legs. A low bench near the wall waits for children, or any guest who does not mind squeezing in. You smile at the mismatched furniture, sensing how it reflects a world where comfort grows from presence, not symmetry. A woman approaches carrying a stack of plates made from pewter and earthenware. Their colors vary from dull gray to warm brown. She places them on the table one by one, adjusting each so the arrangement looks as intentional as the humble tools allow. A few plates wobble slightly, and she presses them down with gentle care. Nearby, a man unfurls a length of fabric intended to serve as a runner. It is woven in soft reds and faded ochres, showing signs of repeated use. He lays it across the center of the table, smoothing out wrinkles with the heel of his hand. The fabric holds the faint scent of lavender from storage chests, a quiet echo of summer fields even in the chill of late autumn. You hear a soft clatter from the next room. A young boy enters, carrying a handful of forks and knives. Their metal surfaces bear tiny scratches, and each handle feels just a little different. He sets them down tentatively, unsure how to place them. His mother crouches beside him, guiding his hands until the arrangement looks pleasing. The boy beams with pride, feeling he has contributed something important. A moment from the lore of early American households surfaces quietly in your mind. Some families set aside a special chair for an unexpected guest, whether or not anyone ever arrived. It symbolized welcome, generosity, and the belief that companionship could appear at any time. You notice an empty chair at the far end of the room, placed slightly apart but still included. Its presence feels intentional. As you move around the table, you glance at the older man hanging a small garland made from dried flowers and wheat. It is simple yet beautiful, a reminder of the harvest that shaped the year. He hangs it from a wooden peg on the wall, stepping back to admire the result. The faint scent of dried petals drifts into the air. While watching this quiet decorating ritual, a question shared among researchers settles into your thoughts. Some specialists continue to discuss how different social classes shaped their Thanksgiving spaces. Did wealthier families aim for refinement while rural homes prioritized abundance and practicality? Or did traditions overlap more than records suggest? The uncertainty lingers softly, like the scent of wheat in the garland. Children drift into the room, tugging chairs into place with clumsy determination. Two girls carry a basket of cloth napkins folded in rough but earnest triangles. One places them neatly beside each plate while the other pauses to refold hers again and again until it looks just right. You feel a warmth in your chest watching them work with such proud concentration. The afternoon light shifts, casting longer shadows on the floor. Someone lights a pair of small candles to test how they will look once evening comes. Their flames flicker, sending a soft glow across the tablecloth. The wax melts slowly, forming tiny rivulets that hint at the peaceful hours still ahead. In a quiet corner, a wooden pitcher filled with fresh water awaits its place on the table. The surface of the water reflects the room like a tiny mirror. When you lift the pitcher slightly, the wood feels cool and solid in your hands. It creaks faintly, as though reacting to the warmth of your palms. A woman enters with a cloth-covered basket. She pulls back the fabric to reveal warm bread cooling inside. The steam rises in gentle tendrils, carrying the unmistakable scent of hearth-baked comfort. She sets the basket near the head of the table, knowing it will be one of the first things everyone reaches for. You step aside to let others pass. Chairs scrape, boards settle, and the room fills with low conversation. The work is quiet but purposeful. Each person who enters contributes something, whether a dish, a gesture, or a smile. For a moment, everything grows still. You look at the unfinished table and imagine how it will appear in just a short while. Candles glowing, steam rising from dishes, conversations weaving like threads of warmth. The mismatched furniture will become a single communal embrace. The long cloth will hide every improvised board. The imperfections will vanish into the soft hum of gratitude. The room hums again as the work continues. A girl tests the sturdiness of a stool. A boy places the last spoon with exaggerated precision. The adults share glances that blend relief and anticipation. You sense how important the table is, not just as a place to eat, but as the heart of gathering. It is where stories will be shared, where laughter will rise, where quiet gratitude will land gently between bites of food. As the final chair is nudged into position, the room settles into a peaceful pause. The table stands ready, waiting, like a patient friend. You let your fingers trail one last time across its surface, feeling the promise held in its wooden grain. Outside, the sky deepens into richer shades of afternoon. Inside, the room glows with quiet satisfaction. You breathe slowly, letting the calm settle into your bones. The feast draws nearer, and you move forward with the day, guided by the gentle rhythm of preparation and togetherness. You step into a quieter part of the house, where the energy shifts gently from busy preparation to something softer, almost reflective. The scents of baking and roasting still float through the air, yet here the atmosphere feels calmer, like a deep breath after long motion. This room holds no pots or chopping boards, no bustling footsteps, only the gentle promise of voices preparing for one of the most meaningful parts of the 19th century Thanksgiving, the moment of gratitude. A small wooden table sits near the window, its surface scattered with a few worn books. Some are hymnals, others are small collections of seasonal verses. The pages look slightly yellowed, their corners softened by generations of hands. You lift one gently. The cover feels smooth and faintly dusty, and when you open it, the scent of old paper drifts upward, warm and comforting in its own quiet way. A detail mentioned frequently in personal journals from this era comes to mind. Many families use Thanksgiving morning or afternoon to read aloud passages from scripture or favorite writings. These readings did not follow a rigid pattern, but reflected whatever the household found meaningful. In some homes, this moment carried deep spiritual weight. In others, it felt more like a simple pause to acknowledge the year's journey. You glance around as family members slowly gather. They settle onto chairs with calm movements, the kind that make no sound except the soft rustle of fabric brushing against wood. A candle flickers on the table, its light trembling slightly in the draught. Someone closes a window just enough to steady the flame. An older woman begins to hum a tune, not quite a hymn, yet not entirely separate from one. Her voice rises softly, warm and intimate. The melody floats through the room like a thread weaving everyone together. Soon, another voice joins, then another. Their harmonies create a gentle cushion of sound, soothing enough to make your shoulders drop with ease. A small and rather charming cultural note drifts into your thoughts. In some communities, families invented their own short songs or rhyming verses for Thanksgiving. These unofficial pieces rarely appeared in written form but lived through memory, passed quietly from one generation to the next. Perhaps the melody you hear now is one of those personal treasures, shaped by countless years of repetition. The singing fades naturally, replaced by comfortable silence. You feel the atmosphere settle like soft snowfall. Then someone opens a worn Bible and begins reading a passage in a steady, warm voice. The cadence is calm, the words lingering between breaths. The room glows with a kind of gentle reverence. As you listen, a quiet question rises in your mind, one that scholars continue to discuss when studying early American customs. Researchers have long explored how much of Thanksgiving's meaning came from religious practice and how much came from family and community traditions. Some evidence suggests a strong spiritual core, while other accounts show celebrations focused more on gathering, food, and fellowship. The balance between these influences remains an open topic, shaped by geography, culture, and individual personality. For now, you simply observe the faces around you. A young girl rests her head against her mother's shoulder, eyes drifting half-closed. A man sits with hands folded, his expression thoughtful. A boy fidgets with the edge of his sleeve but listens carefully whenever the older voices soften. The unity in the room is gentle, unforced. Everyone belongs here, whether fully attentive or half dreaming. The older woman picks up a small handwritten page from the table. She reads a short poem, its words simple but sincere. The poem thanks the land for its harvest, the past for its lessons, and the future for its quiet promise. Her voice trembles slightly near the ending, and the sound tugs at your chest. You notice how the listeners lean in, not out of formality, but affection. Someone reaches for a small wooden box near the center of the table. Inside lie modest keepsakes: a dried flower, a smooth stone collected from a river bank, a scrap of cloth from an old garment. These objects hold sentimental meaning, tokens reminding the family of seasons gone by. One by one, the items are lifted and passed around. Each object stirs a memory, sparking soft murmurs of laughter or tender sighs. A teenage boy speaks quietly about something he is grateful for. His voice wavers, but the family listens with calm attention. A younger child follows, offering a shy thanks for warm bread and a soft blanket. The adults smile, appreciating the simplicity. You feel yourself relaxing into the moment, drawn into the warmth of their shared words. The candle flame dances slowly, its light shimmering across faces softened by emotion and the glow of the afternoon. Someone begins a short prayer, asking for peace in the coming winter and for the strength to face whatever challenges may arrive. The words are steady, soothing, and full of gentle trust. A faint breeze nudges the curtain near the window, carrying with it the scent of cold air and distant smoke. The mixture of sensations feels grounding. Inside this room, gratitude becomes a ritual of slowing down, of acknowledging life with honesty rather than grandeur. A woman closes one of the hymnals and places it gently on the table. The soft tap of the cover marks the end of the gathering. People rise slowly, stretching limbs that have grown pleasantly heavy. A few hug quietly. Others exchange small smiles. The mood is peaceful, not solemn. The household has taken a moment to center itself, to recognize the shared fabric of their lives. You step closer to the candle and watch its flame flicker. The room still holds the echo of voices and the warmth of emotion. As you leave, you feel the gentle afterglow of this moment settle into you, like a soft layer of calm resting on your shoulders. You return toward the main part of the house, ready to walk back into the aroma of roasting turkey and rising excitement. The day continues, each part flowing effortlessly into the next, and you move with it, carrying the quiet gratitude of this room deep within your senses. You step outside for a moment, letting the cooler air brush your face and clear your mind before drifting toward the edge of the yard. The kitchen hum fades behind you, replaced by gentle outdoor sounds. Leaves crunch faintly under your shoes, and a pale ribbon of chimney smoke curls upward from neighboring houses. As you look down the road, you realize something is beginning to happen. People are moving about with baskets in hand, wrapped in shawls and coats, heading toward one another with a kind of quiet excitement that only grows during late afternoon on Thanksgiving Day. You follow the path toward the nearest homestead, your steps slowing as you notice the way neighbors begin exchanging small bundles. A woman holds a cloth-covered loaf, still warm from her hearth. Another carries a jar of pickled beets, the deep red liquid glowing like a jewel when the sun catches it. They greet each other with smiles that rise gently, the kind of smiles that bloom more from familiarity than surprise. A custom frequently mentioned in older diaries surfaces in your thoughts. In many communities, Thanksgiving served as an ideal moment to bring gifts of food to neighbors. These gifts were not extravagant. They were symbolic gestures of connection, quiet acknowledgments that life in rural America thrived only through mutual care. As you watch one woman slip a small bundle of dried herbs into another's basket, you feel that sense of connection settling around you like a shawl. You continue toward another home where a young couple stands near their door, arranging apples into 2 baskets. The apples vary in color, some greenish gold, others streaked with red. They polish each one with a soft cloth, making the skins shine. When an older man approaches, they hand him the smaller basket without ceremony. He nods in gratitude, gives a gentle pat to the side of the house as if greeting an old friend, and continues down the path. As you observe, a curious regional quirk comes to mind. Some families believed that a neighbor who arrived with a gift of apples would bring good fortune for winter. Others insisted that the exchange of bread on Thanksgiving ensured peaceful relations for the coming year. Whether or not anyone truly believed these ideas, the habits persisted, creating gentle rituals in communities where every season demanded cooperation. Children race around the yard ahead of you, their boots thudding softly against the hardening ground. One girl carries a basket of small turnips, holding it against her chest as if the turnips might attempt escape. Another child clutches a knitted doll with one hand, while offering a piece of cornbread with the other. Their laughter lifts into the cold air, bright and unself-conscious. You approach a small wooden gate that leads into another yard. Here, an elderly woman sits near her doorway, humming as she ties a strip of cloth around a jar of preserved peaches. The jar looks like sunlight captured inside glass. She notices you, smiles warmly, and gestures for you to take a seat beside her. The bench beneath you feels cool and slightly rough, its surface worn from years of use. She hands you a small slice of dried apple, its texture chewy and sweet. As she works, you observe the way her hands move. Every gesture is gentle yet precise, shaped by decades of practice. She tells a story about the peaches in the jar, how they were gathered with her granddaughter on one of the last warm days before autumn settled in. The memory carries a soft glow, like an ember she keeps safely cupped in her palm. While sitting there, another question reaches your thoughts, one that historians have examined with curiosity. Researchers often discuss how deeply Thanksgiving strengthened social ties in rural communities. Some argue that the holiday acted almost like a miniature community festival, full of neighborly exchanges and shared labor. Others suggest the gatherings were more sporadic, shaped by individual preference rather than collective tradition. The truth seems to rest somewhere between, shifting from region to region, household to household. A young man arrives at the woman's door. He carries a bundle wrapped tightly in cloth. When he reveals the contents, you see a pile of freshly baked biscuits, each round and golden. He offers them with a shy grin, and the woman laughs softly, delighted. She trades him a jar of the peaches, pressing his hands around it insistently, as though she wants to ensure he truly accepts it. As you move along the lane again, you encounter a pair of boys carrying a wooden crate filled with small, colorful gourds. Each gourd is knobby, striped, or curved in strange shapes. The boys announce that they are distributing them to households for good luck. One boy insists that the yellow gourds are luckiest. The other claims the green ones bring better harvests. They do not agree, but both hand you a gourd with cheerful confidence. You tuck it under your arm, amused by the enthusiasm poured into such a simple object. The gourd feels cool and slightly bumpy in your hand, its surface firm and smooth in some places, rough in others. You tilt it gently and notice faint specks of soil still clinging to tiny creases. The sky deepens a little as the afternoon stretches toward evening. The air cools further, brushing your cheeks with a fresh sharpness. You hear someone calling softly from a porch, inviting neighbors to step inside for a moment of warmth. People wander in and out of houses, carrying baskets, jars, cloth-wrapped loaves. Doorways glow like warm pockets in the chill. Across the road, a woman hands a neighbor a small woven trinket shaped like a bird. It is made from straw and dried grass twisted together. She explains that she crafted it during spare moments over the past week. The neighbor admires it, turning it carefully between her fingers. Its texture is faintly scratchy, but beautiful in its simplicity. You wonder whether it will be hung by a hearth or tucked inside a drawer to become a keepsake for years to come. A soft murmur of conversation follows you as you continue walking. People talk about the weather, the harvest, and light-hearted gossip about who oversalted their biscuits last year. Their voices mingle with the rustling of dry leaves and the distant bark of a dog who seems unclear whether it wants to join the festivities or guard the property. You arrive at a small crossroads where several families stand together. They have placed a large basket in the center, filled with small gifts. People add items one at a time. A few apples, a folded cloth, a piece of soap carved into a simple shape. The basket will later be delivered to a family who struggled during the harvest season. The gesture is humble, but it radiates quiet generosity. Your fingers brush against the rim of the communal basket, and the texture feels sturdy yet softened from repeated use. The woven fibers are slightly frayed but strong, holding together years of goodwill. The sun begins to dip toward the horizon, painting warm amber and rose-colored streaks across the sky. The light reflects off windows and settles in soft glows along fences and rooftops. People begin walking home, their baskets lighter, their conversations richer. A boy runs past you with a half-eaten cookie in his hand, leaving crumbs that scatter like tiny blessings across the path. His mother calls after him, her voice warm but tired. As you head back toward the main house, the sense of community lingers around you. Every exchange you witnessed carries its own quiet beauty. Nothing grand, nothing loud, just the steady reaffirmation that people in this era rely on one another, celebrate one another, and weave their daily lives together with small acts of kindness. You step through the doorway again, feeling the warmth of the hearth rush toward you. The scents of roasting meat and spice-filled pies welcome you back like old friends. Outside, the neighborly rituals continue in the fading light. Inside, the feast prepares to reach its final, glowing form. You close the door gently behind you, carrying the echo of shared generosity into the next chapter of this unfolding day. You return to the warmth of the house for only a moment before someone nudges you toward the door again. This time, they gesture not toward the quiet lane of neighborly gifts, but toward the road leading into town. The suggestion feels gentle, almost conspiratorial, as if they know you have only seen half the world of Thanksgiving so far. Rural gatherings carry one kind of charm. Urban life in the early 1800s has an entirely different rhythm. You wrap a shawl around your shoulders and step into the chilled air once more. The walk toward town begins quietly. Frost crunches beneath your feet, and thin curls of smoke rise lazily from chimneys scattered across the outskirts. But as the houses begin to stand closer together, the atmosphere thickens with sound. The distant clatter of wagon wheels rolls like a soft drumbeat. Voices float on the air. Laughter tumbles along the street like fallen leaves stirred by wind. You sense a shift long before you reach the main road. A detail often mentioned in early urban newspapers stirs in your thoughts. Although Thanksgiving began as a largely New England tradition, growing cities embraced it quickly, reshaping the day into something more public. That shift becomes clear as you reach the first intersection. Here, townsfolk gather outside shops decorated with sprigs of winter berries and pine. Some stores have hung fabric ribbons across their windows, faded but festive. You feel the buzz of movement, the anticipation of a shared celebration. A woman passes you carrying a pie tin wrapped in cloth. She moves briskly, weaving through the crowd with the confidence of someone used to city pace. A young man rushes after her, balancing 2 loaves of bread stacked in a precarious tower. You hear him mutter a prayer that he will not drop them before reaching his aunt's house. The aroma of warm yeast follows in his wake. 2 boys race across the street, one holding a wooden whistle and the other gripping a small drum. Their instruments create a cheerful, clumsy rhythm that earns fond smiles from passers-by. A vendor selling roasted chestnuts calls out to them, offering a handful if they promise not to make the horses skittish. They accept, with the solemnity of a treaty signing. As you walk deeper into the town center, the sounds grow richer. Wagon wheels rumble over cobblestones. Doors open and shut with wooden thuds. Conversations spill into the street, mixing with shouts of merchants preparing to close shop early for the holiday. A baker stands proudly in his doorway, brushing flour off his apron while announcing that his last batch of bread sold out before noon. His grin stretches wide, warmed by the success of the day. A curious historical note comes to mind as you observe the scene. City celebrations sometimes included small parades or informal processions, not the grand, organized spectacles of later centuries, but loose gatherings of young people marching with makeshift instruments or carrying banners of embroidered cloth. You hear the faint jingle of metal now, and when you turn the corner, you see a group of older boys stepping in time as they pound makeshift drums. Their boots strike the ground with determination, and though their rhythm wavers, their pride remains steadfast. Shopkeepers stand outside their doors, watching the impromptu parade with tolerant amusement. A few clap along. One elderly man even taps his cane on the ground to match the beat. The boys beam with delight at every bit of attention they receive. Their performance is rough, loud, and thoroughly charming. You continue walking until you reach a busy square. Here, the world feels different. Fires burn in iron braziers to keep visitors warm. A woman ladles steaming cider into tin cups, handing them out in exchange for a coin or sometimes simply for a smile. The cider smells sweet, spiced, and inviting. You wrap your hands around a warm cup, letting the heat seep into your chilled fingers. A cluster of people gather near a posted announcement nailed to a wooden board. You step closer and see handwritten notices about store hours, church services, and community gatherings. One sheet lists instructions for a Thanksgiving charity drive intended to help families in need. The script loops neatly across the page, a reminder that even in bustling towns, generosity remains woven into the holiday. As you stand there, sipping your cider, a lively conversation catches your ear. 2 men discuss which tavern offers the best Thanksgiving stew. Their debate grows animated, full of exaggerated praise and mock scorn. The older man insists his favorite tavern uses more pepper, while the younger claims the seasoning makes it inedible. Their disagreement is friendly, a piece of spirited banter that draws laughter from those listening. A modest but delightful slice of urban folklore surfaces in your mind. Some city families like to buy small pastries or sugared nuts during Thanksgiving outings, treating them as special indulgences reserved for holidays. A young girl near you clutches a paper cone filled with candied almonds. She nibbles them one by one, her eyes bright with quiet bliss. Amid the cheer, you once again feel a lingering question that researchers often discuss when examining early American celebrations. How different were urban and rural Thanksgivings in spirit? Did city gatherings emphasize festivity and public display more than their country counterparts? Or did both worlds share the same underlying warmth? Evidence remains varied, leaving room for interpretation. You see that complexity playing out right in front of you. Families rush home for intimate meals, yet the streets pulse with shared excitement. A coach passes along the road, wheels rattling loudly. Inside, passengers sit bundled in wool. One woman leans out just enough to wave at someone, standing on the sidewalk. The man waves back with a handkerchief, his eyes bright. Moments later, a younger woman steps out of a millinery shop, her bonnet draped with a fresh ribbon. She hurries to greet him, cheeks flushed with the cold. A group of children near the fountain play a game that involves chasing each other in circles until someone falls laughing into the cold grass. Their giggles rise with the wind, light and irresistible. A few adults watch from nearby benches, smiling with the kind of fondness that comes from seeing younger generations carry forward joy without needing any encouragement. You continue wandering through the town, as afternoon slips into early twilight. The lamplighter moves from post to post, raising his pole to ignite tiny pools of yellow glow. The lights shimmer against the deepening sky, transforming the streets into soft golden pathways. You feel the warmth in your chest, even though the air has grown colder. A man selling wintergreens calls out gently as he begins closing his stall. A woman carrying a turkey wrapped in linen passes by, walking with careful steps. The scent of roasted chestnuts drifts steadily through the square. As you begin your walk back toward the rural edge of town, you glance over your shoulder one last time. The glow of lanterns, the hum of voices, the movement of people returning home, all blend into a scene that feels tender and vividly alive. Thanksgiving in the city carries a rhythm of its own, bustling yet heartfelt, communal yet personal. You turn back toward the fading path, letting the town's warm energy travel with you. Ahead lies the quiet countryside, the scent of pies, the glow of hearth fire, and the sound of family gathering again. You walk forward, ready to rejoin that world as the holiday deepens into evening. You step back onto the quiet rural road, leaving behind the bustle of the town, and you feel the temperature dip almost immediately. The air turns crisp enough to make your breath puff out in pale clouds, drifting upward like soft ghosts. The light has shifted now. Late afternoon leans gently toward evening, coloring every field and fence with tones of silver and gold. As you walk toward the house, you become more aware of the way people in the 19th century prepare themselves for this cold season. Clothing does much more than keep them warm. It shapes their daily comfort, their identity, even the rhythm of their movements. When you step indoors, the first thing you notice is the contrast. Warm air from the hearth washes over you, and your chilled fingertips begin to sting slightly as they thaw. A row of wool coats hangs near the door, their fibers thick and slightly coarse when you brush your hand against them. The coats carry the faint scent of outdoor air, wood smoke, and a hint of lanolin that lingers from the sheep that provided the wool. You watch as family members begin readying themselves for the evening tasks. A young girl ties a knitted scarf around her neck, her fingers working with practiced motions. The scarf is soft and slightly fuzzy, dyed in muted blues that remind you of morning shadows on snow. She pulls it close, smiling as the warmth settles instantly. In early American accounts from this era, it is often noted that winter clothing was layered with near mathematical care. Linen, then wool, then heavier wool, sometimes topped with fur or quilted cotton. People built their own insulation with whatever materials the season allowed. You see the truth of that reflected in every garment here. Shawls rest on chair backs. Mittens hang drying near the hearth. Heavy socks are folded neatly in small piles like quiet soldiers waiting for duty. The mother of the household picks up a thick, quilted overskirt. She drapes it over her regular dress to keep her legs warm as she continues tending the fire and preparing for the feast. The fabric rustles softly when she moves, its stitched patterns forming tiny diamond shapes across the surface. Each stitch holds a small bit of care, and the skirt seems to radiate a comforting weight. As she passes by, you notice a pair of boots near the door, made of sturdy leather. The surface feels cool and slightly stiff under your hand. Small traces of dried mud cling to the soles. The boots have been well used, their creases deep and permanent. A faint smell of tanned hide lingers in the air around them. A little aside from domestic folklore touches your thoughts. Some families believed that stuffing wool scraps inside boots before Thanksgiving brought good luck for the coming winter. Not warmth, but specifically luck. Whether through superstition or playful tradition, children embraced the idea eagerly. You glance at one pair of boots and catch sight of a tiny scrap of wool peeking from the top, as though the superstition lives quietly in this household too. A boy wanders toward you wearing a thick wool sweater that looks slightly too large for him. The sleeves bunch around his wrists, and he tugs them up repeatedly with an expression that is part annoyance, part pride. The sweater is scratchy, but he wears it anyway, because winter does not negotiate with comfort. His cheeks glow pink from the cold, and he grins as he pulls on a knitted cap to complete the outfit. As you observe these layers and textures, you become aware of a conversation among historians that often surfaces when discussing clothing from this era. Some researchers emphasize practicality above all, describing garments as purely functional tools for survival. Others highlight the subtle beauty and personal expression woven into each piece, noting decorative stitching, dyed threads, and careful mending that reveal a quiet pride in appearance. The truth, as always, likely blends both perspectives, and you see evidence of that blend in every corner of the room. A woman near the hearth takes a seat and begins mending a tear in a woolen glove. Her needle glints softly in the firelight. The rhythm of her stitching forms a gentle, almost musical pattern. She explains that the glove tore during last week's frost while feeding the chickens, but she smiles, saying the glove still has many years left in it. You touch the wool, feeling its rough but comforting texture beneath your fingertips. Across the room, a young girl folds quilts that have been warming near the hearth. She lifts one quilt carefully and spreads it across a bench. The fabric is soft with age. The colors are muted, faded from years of washing, but the pattern is still beautiful. When she smooths the edges with her palms, you can almost feel the warmth stored inside the cotton layers. The father of the house re-enters from outside, stomping snowflakes from his boots, even though the ground holds only a thin dusting of frost. His jacket, made of thick wool lined with a softer inner layer, carries the cold with it. He removes it with a sigh, hanging it near the fire. When he brushes past you, you can feel the coolness still radiating from the fabric. The clothing in this world holds stories. A patch on a sleeve hints at a moment of work or clumsiness. A frayed hem speaks of a season's worth of chores. A faded color reminds you of sunlight from summers long past. Every piece feels lived in and loved, valued not for fashion but for memory and necessity. As the sun sinks lower, light from the window turns a dusky rose. The glow mingles with the soft gold of the hearth, bathing the room in warmth that seems to hug every person inside. A woman adjusts a shawl around her shoulders, lifting the ends to rest lightly on her chest. The shawl feels surprisingly heavy when she places it in your hands, its woven threads thick and solid. A young boy tugs at his mittens and proudly shows them to you. They are made of thick, homespun yarn and slightly mismatched in size. He announces that he helped knit one of them. When asked which one, he pauses, looks at both mittens, and declares that he has forgotten. Everyone laughs kindly, not at him but with him, sharing in the charm of the moment. You walk closer to the window and place your fingers on the cool glass. Outside, the landscape settles deeper into evening. Bare branches sway slowly in the cold breeze, their silhouettes sharp against the fading sky. You can almost feel the chill trying to sneak its way indoors, stopped only by layers of fabric and the glowing hearth. Someone places a folded blanket into your arms, urging you to wrap it around yourself. The blanket feels heavy, soft, and slightly scratchy, as if it wants to settle into your shoulders and stay there. You tuck it around you, letting the warmth bloom slowly across your back. As dinner draws near, everyone adjusts their clothing one last time. Shawls are tightened, sweaters straightened, socks pulled up. Warmth becomes part of the ritual, just as essential as the turkey in the oven or the pies cooling on the sill. You breathe in deeply, feeling both the warmth of the hearth and the lingering cold from the window. Clothing in this world is more than a barrier against weather. It is a companion, a personal shelter, a reminder that comfort is created, not simply found. Wrapped in your borrowed blanket, you follow the others toward the dining room. Outside, the night gathers quietly. Inside, the warmth waits to welcome every chilled fingertip and winter-hardened heart. You follow the warm shuffle of footsteps into a livelier corner of the house, already sensing a different kind of energy bubbling beneath the surface. The adults keep their movements calm and measured, but the children clearly do not share that discipline. They buzz around the room like excited fireflies, half attempting to help, half plotting mischief, all fully absorbed in the strange electricity that holidays awaken in young hearts. You step into their orbit, unsure whether you are about to witness games, chores, or chaos wrapped in innocence. A small boy darts past you, clutching something in both hands. You turn just in time to see him hide behind a chair, where he opens his palms to reveal a pilfered cranberry. He pops it into his mouth triumphantly, then immediately scrunches his face at the tartness. His reaction sends him into giggles. A girl nearby rolls her eyes at him, although she is fighting a smile of her own. A detail often mentioned in letters from this era comes gently to mind. Children looked forward to Thanksgiving not just for the meal, but for the freedom of the day itself. Many schools were closed, chores were lighter, adults were distracted with cooking. This created a rare pocket of nearly ungoverned time, and children used every moment of it to whisper secrets, invent little adventures, and slip into corners where no one would immediately notice them. You watch as a pair of siblings rummage through a small chest filled with toys and trinkets, wooden animals, marbles, bits of ribbon, and a tiny spinning top lie scattered across the floor. The top is clearly a favorite. One child gives it a twist and watches it wobble and hum across the floorboards. When it skitters dangerously close to a stack of plates, both children freeze, wide-eyed. The top teeters, slows, and finally falls harmlessly. They exhale in unison, then laugh with the relief of narrowly avoided catastrophe. A lesser-known practice from some rural households floats into your memory. Children sometimes created small Thanksgiving plays or skits, often with no script, no costumes, and no plan aside from enthusiasm. Their performances ranged from endearing to unintentionally chaotic. You see hints of this in the way two older children stand in a corner, whispering with exaggerated seriousness. Every now and then, one gestures dramatically while the other nods, as though they are about to reenact the entire history of the harvest in 5 confused minutes. A young girl walks toward you carrying a handful of dried corn husks. She explains shyly that she is making a doll. Her fingers fold and twist the husks with careful precision. When she wraps a small strip of cloth around the doll's middle, she beams with pride. The figure, simple as it is, carries a tenderness that you feel instantly. You admire it, and her shy smile grows brighter. The children's chatter grows louder, mixing with the hum of adult voices in the next room. The house feels full, every corner alive. You take a seat on a low stool as a group of children begin planning a game. One proposes a race around the yard. Another suggests hide and seek inside the house. A third insists that they should sneak into the pantry for crumbs of leftover pie crust. The group debates all 3 options with such intensity that it feels like a small parliament in session. While listening, you recall how researchers studying childhood in early America often highlight the balance between strict discipline and unexpected freedom. Some accounts describe children behaving with almost military order, while others emphasize unrestrained play during holidays. The truth likely varies from family to family, and you see that variety here. At one moment, children move with impeccable manners. At the next, they are climbing onto furniture like tiny adventurers seeking higher ground. You step aside as 2 boys run past you holding a wooden hoop and a stick. They race outside, laughter trailing behind them like a ribbon caught in the wind. Through the window, you see the hoop bouncing across the yard with uneven determination. The boys chasing it with whoops of delight. Their feet kick up small clouds of frost dust, scattering into the fading light. Inside, a toddler toddles past, dragging a knitted blanket. She stops, plops down next to you, and hands you the edge of the blanket, as if inviting you into her tiny world. When you gently tug it, she giggles and tugs back, starting a quiet game that needs no rules. In the far corner, a group of older children gather around a small tin of nuts. One boy cracks a walnut with a stone, proud of his strength. The others cheer as loudly as if he has accomplished a heroic feat. When he breaks the shell cleanly, he pumps his fist triumphantly. The children begin taking turns cracking nuts, each pretending they have discovered some long-lost ancient technique for conquering hard shells. The fire in the hearth pops suddenly, sending a small spark upward. The children gasp dramatically, then burst into delighted laughter. A girl announces that the spark is a sign that the feast will be especially good this year. A younger boy repeats her statement as if it were prophecy, his voice full of awe. As the room fills with warmth and sound, you sense how important these little moments are. Children in this era do not have screens, toys with batteries, or shelves stuffed with manufactured entertainment. Their joy comes from each other, from imagination, from the simple satisfaction of inventing a world with rules known only to them. A boy approaches holding a feather he found outside. He waves it through the air, pretending it is a quill. He scribbles invisible lines on his arm, then pretends to sign a royal decree granting permission for extra pie tonight. The children erupt in excited whispers, taking the imaginary decree far more seriously than you expected. A girl beside him decides to create her own decree, declaring that anyone wearing mismatched socks will be appointed official helper of the feast. Instantly, half the room pulls up their pant legs to display socks that do not match in color, size, or pattern. Children shout, pointing at each other's legs, thrilled with this spontaneous discovery of authority. As you watch, you feel a softness bloom in your chest. These moments, full of joy and innocence, form some of the most cherished corners of memory. Children are often the heart of holiday traditions, shaping the day with their laughter and curious spirits. The sky outside deepens into dusk, and the window glows with the reflection of the fire's warm light. A woman calls gently from the kitchen, inviting everyone to wash their hands before the meal. Groans echo from the children, but they obey with dramatic reluctance, dragging their feet as though asked to undertake a great burden. Yet even in their complaints, they smile, and as they line up, one by one, you realize that their playful energy is about to blend seamlessly into the deeper warmth of the gathering. You follow them toward the basin, feeling the shift as the lively chaos of play begins to settle into the quiet anticipation of the feast. You follow the stream of children toward the wash basin, but before you reach it, you notice a quieter, steadier rhythm unfolding in the background. The house feels comfortably chaotic in the front rooms, yet behind the scenes, another world has been working without pause. You turn your attention toward it, drawn by the soft scrape of a kettle being lifted, the hush of footsteps, and the gentle murmur of voices speaking low enough not to disrupt the family gathering. This is the realm of the people whose work often goes unseen, though the entire holiday rests upon their steady hands. You step into a side hallway and feel the temperature shift slightly. It is still warm, but the heat does not pool here the way it does near the hearth. A young maid passes you, balancing a stack of folded cloths with impressive precision. The fabric rests against her chest, and she adjusts her grip without breaking stride. Her shoes make soft taps on the wooden floor, each step measured, efficient, almost musical. A detail frequently noted in domestic manuals from the 19th century surfaces in your thoughts. Many households, especially those with moderate means, relied on hired help to manage the heavier or more repetitive work of holiday preparation. These workers were often young women from nearby farms or towns, saving money for their future or helping support their families. Their days began before sunrise and ended long after the dishes were washed. You catch sight of one such young woman now, bent over a wooden bucket filled with warm water. She scrubs a pot with rhythmic motions, humming softly as she works. The pot's darkened metal reflects the flickering candle nearby. Her hands move confidently, as though the pot and her grip share a long-standing understanding. She lifts it, inspects it, then returns to scrubbing with the satisfaction of someone who knows exactly what she is doing and why it matters. From another room comes the faint thud of firewood being stacked. A hired boy enters carrying an armful of logs that reach almost to his chin. He staggers slightly under the weight but manages to keep everything balanced. When he drops the logs beside the hearth, the sound echoes deeply through the walls. He rubs his aching forearms and glances around, making sure he placed the wood exactly where it should be. A quiet, easily overlooked detail from old diaries enters your mind. In many homes, servants and hired workers often ate earlier than the family on holidays, catching brief moments of rest before returning to their duties. Their meal was simpler, their break short, but there was often camaraderie in that small window of shared food and shared relief. As you move closer to the kitchen, you glimpse a small plate resting on a side shelf. Half a biscuit, A few slices of apple, a modest portion of stew. Someone has paused mid-meal, called back to the next task. You wander toward a narrow doorway that leads to the pantry. Inside, shelves are lined from floor to ceiling, with jars, crocks, and carefully wrapped bundles. You hear someone sorting them, checking which items will be needed during the feast, and which can be returned to storage. Their movements are quick and quiet, every sound softened by the thick walls. A hand reaches up to straighten a jar of pickles, then moves to seal a crock of salted meat with a firm push. While you stand there, another kind of thought arises, one often mentioned by scholars examining the social structures of this era. Researchers continue to discuss the complex relationships between families and their hired help. Some accounts describe warm, almost familial bonds forged over years of shared life. Others point out clear divisions, marked by status and expectation. The truth, as always, depends on the people involved, the household culture, and the unspoken rules that drift through rooms like these. A quiet shuffle behind you draws your attention. A young woman enters the pantry carrying a woven basket. She sets it down and begins to sort through its contents, separating items that need to be warmed, items that need to be served cold, and items that will be sent out to neighbors later in the evening. Her focus is intense, her motions graceful. She pauses only once, brushing a loose curl of hair from her forehead with the back of her hand. You notice how she moves, not rushed, not sluggish, but steady. Steadiness is her craft. This holiday relies on it. She glances at the narrow window and smiles faintly at the view of dusk settling outside. Perhaps she is allowing herself a moment of quiet appreciation before the next wave of tasks begins. In the adjoining hallway, a servant boy kneels to wipe up a trail of muddy footprints. He works with brisk efficiency, scrubbing in small circles until the wood gleams again. When he finishes, he sits back on his heels for a moment, resting. His breath forms a small puff in the cooler air of the hallway. Then, hearing a voice call his name, he rises quickly and returns to work without complaint. You walk deeper into the service areas of the house, where the sounds of activity blend together like a gentle background symphony. Someone stirs a pot of broth at the secondary hearth. Another person folds fresh napkins laid out to dry near the warm bricks. A kettle whistles faintly, announcing it is ready to be poured. You watch arms, hands, shoulders, and backs moving in harmony, each person fitting seamlessly into the flow. A young woman approaches, carrying a tray of utensils. She pauses briefly to adjust a spoon that keeps sliding out of place. When she sees you, she gives a polite nod and continues toward the dining room. The tray rattles softly, the metal tapping like tiny bells. You take a moment to stand still, letting the quiet, heroic nature of this work settle into your awareness. These people may not take the seats of honor at the table, but the table would be empty without them. They create the comfort that others enjoy. Their labor becomes invisible only because they perform it so well. A pot near the hearth hisses as its lid shifts from the rising steam. A young woman rushes to lift it slightly, letting the steam escape before it overflows. The scent of herbs fills the room again, followed by the warmth of gratitude rising inside you. As you slowly rejoin the family in the front rooms, you carry with you the soft imprint of these unseen hands. Their work continues behind you, steady, faithful, and full of quiet importance. The feast will shine brightly in the dining room, but its glow is built here, in the gentle corners where people work with humility and skill. You return to the sound of laughter echoing from the parlor, feeling the weight of appreciation settle warmly in your chest. The holiday draws closer to its peak, shaped by every pair of hands, both visible and unseen. You drift back toward the heart of the house, following the sound of something soft and melodic rising through the warm air. The dining room rests in anticipation. The kitchen continues its careful labor, but here in the parlor, a new energy begins to bloom. Evening has settled comfortably outside, draping the windows in deep hues of blue and silver, and inside the home a gentle brightness gathers around a small circle of chairs. Someone has taken out a fiddle. Another holds a simple wooden flute. A third person taps a foot along the floor in quiet rhythm, as if preparing for the night's soft celebration. The fiddle player raises the instrument to her chin. The polished wood gleams in the candlelight, warm and amber-toned. When she draws the bow across the strings, the first notes rise like a sigh of relief after a long day's work. The melody is slow at first, sweet and searching, drifting through the room with the ease of smoke curling upward from a fire. A detail often mentioned in household journals comes to mind as you settle into a nearby seat. Music played a central role in evening gatherings during the early 1800s. Families did not always possess instruments, but when they did, the holidays' calm hours often revolved around them. A fiddle could fill a room with warmth, almost equal to that of the hearth. The tune grows livelier. It dances gently across the floorboards. People smile and lean closer, as though letting the music wrap around them. A man begins tapping the heel of his hand on the arm of a chair, quietly marking the beat. A child sways in place, eyes half closed, lulled by the rhythm. Across the room, a woman begins plucking a small lap harp. Its strings release soft, crystalline tones that weave through the fiddle's melody like fine threads of silver. The harmony settles lightly on your shoulders, soothing and bright at once. You feel yourself sinking into the sound, letting it smooth the edges of the day. A small piece of modest folklore flutters into your thoughts. In some communities, it was believed that playing music on Thanksgiving evening ensured a peaceful winter. Whether or not anyone fully trusted the idea, families often played anyway, embracing the comfort that sound could offer after a marathon of holiday labor. You sense that same comfort here. Every note seems infused with the warmth the day has been building toward. Between tunes, gentle conversation flows. Someone shares a brief story about learning to play the fiddle from a grandfather who always insisted that music sounded better by firelight. Another recalls a neighbor who could coax a tune from a simple tin whistle, turning even the quietest nights into small celebrations. Laughter rises softly, like bubbles drifting upward from a resting pot. The room darkens just slightly as someone dims one of the lamps. The softer light makes the music feel rounder, deeper, as though it now fills not just the room but the spaces between heartbeats. You watch the fiddle player's fingers dance along the strings, nimble and sure. Each gesture carries years of practice, muscle memory shaped by countless evenings, just like this one. While listening, you feel the faint whisper of an academic question that often appears in discussions of early American leisure. Researchers continue to explore how music influenced family identity in the 19th century. Some believe it helped unify households during difficult seasons. Others see it as a way for communities to retain cultural roots brought from distant homelands. The answer, you sense, lies somewhere in the harmonious overlap of both ideas. A young boy steps forward with a small drum tucked under his arm. He asks shyly if he may join. The musicians smile and nod. He taps the drum lightly at first, then a little more confidently as the tune picks up again. His rhythm is imperfect, but enthusiastic. The room seems to breathe with him, adjusting easily to his youthful tempo. Later, a girl begins to sing. Her voice is clear and soft, rising just above the instruments. The lyrics tell of a long journey through forests and fields, of homecoming, of warm fires waiting at dusk. Her high notes drift like feathers, and the lower ones settle into the glow of the room. You feel chills rise gently along your arms, not from cold, but from the quiet beauty of the sound. The melody shifts into something slightly faster, playful and bright. A few adults take each other's hands and sway where they sit. Some tap their shoes against the floor. Even the children join in, stepping lightly in small circles, as if performing a dance half remembered from last year's celebration. A kettle on the small stove near the corner lets out a soft hiss, and someone pours warm cider into wooden cups. The sweetness of apples and cinnamon fills the air, blending with the music and firelight. You accept a cup, feeling the heat seep into your hands as you sip. The flavor blooms on your tongue, deep and mellow, carrying hints of orchards and autumn breezes. The music softens again. The fiddle slips into a slow, lingering tune that seems to twirl in place, like the last leaf, clinging to a branch, before winter pulls it free. The lap harp answers with delicate notes. The drum falls silent. People rest quietly, listening to the way the sound moves through the air like a gentle whisper. A child curls up on her mother's lap, eyes growing heavy. Her mother strokes her hair in slow, easy motions. The fire pops softly, warming the room with each gentle breath of flame. You watch the flickering glow paint gold across the musicians' faces. Someone picks up a small flute and plays a simple descending line, like a sigh at the end of a long sentence. The music seems to settle into the walls, the floor, even your clothes. It becomes part of the air, part of the moment. For a moment, no one speaks. The silence feels comfortable, like an extra quilt laid across the room. The music has drawn everyone together, smoothing the transitions between tasks and celebration, labor and rest. As the last notes fade, the musicians smile modestly at the warm appreciation around them. No applause, just sincere nods and contented sighs. This is not a performance. It is a shared breath, a woven moment of togetherness shaped by sound, warmth, and the easy closeness of a holiday evening. You rise slowly, letting the final echoes cling gently to your senses. The night deepens outside. The hearth glows gently inside. And the story of this day continues to unfold in warm, comforting layers, guided by music that lingers long after the instruments fall quiet. You ease away from the circle of musicians and wander toward the hearth, drawn by the quiet murmur of voices coming from a group gathered near the glowing embers. The fire has softened to a mellow orange, sending out gentle heat that caresses your face. Chairs have been pulled close, forming an intimate ring around the warm center, and you sense that this part of the evening carries a different energy. Not lively like the music, not bustling like the kitchen, but hushed, reflective, and threaded with the magic of shared stories. As you step closer, the soft creak of the floorboards announces your arrival. A few faces turn and smile in welcome. Someone gestures for you to join them, offering a seat on a low-cushioned stool close to the hearth. You sit, feeling the warmth envelop your legs as the gentle crackling of the fire punctuates the air like tiny sparks of memory. A detail often noted in rural memories comes quietly to mind. Evenings around the hearth were cherished opportunities for families to tell stories, pass down family histories, and share small, treasured bits of lore. For many households, these stories formed a thread that tied generations together. On Thanksgiving, that thread glowed even brighter. The oldest member of the household sits back in his chair, hands folded comfortably across his lap. His voice carries the steady timbre of someone who has weathered many winters. He begins describing a Thanksgiving long ago, when the family braved sudden snowfall to gather under one roof. His story unfolds slowly, with gentle humor woven into the details. The children listen raptly, their eyes reflecting firelight. A young girl rests her chin on her hands, leaning closer as he describes how a runaway goose nearly derailed the meal that year. The laughter that follows is soft but genuine. The embers brighten, as if approving the moment. As you observe, a charming and lesser-known custom drifts into your thoughts. Some families believed that telling a particularly amusing story on Thanksgiving guaranteed that the next harvest season would be abundant. Others preferred sharing tales of perseverance and gratitude, hoping to inspire a sense of resilience for the coming winter. Whether rooted in superstition or simple tradition, these storytelling habits added a cozy charm to the holiday. A woman takes her turn next, sharing a memory of a Thanksgiving feast, interrupted by an adventurous raccoon slipping through the open door. She describes how it darted under the table, scattering guests and nearly knocking over a bowl of potato pudding. The memory sends ripples of laughter around the circle, and even the shyest listeners cannot help but smile. While these light-hearted stories flow, you sense another question resting beneath them, one that researchers often explore when studying 19th-century households. How much of this storytelling served as entertainment, and how much functioned as a way to preserve family and community identity? Some historians suggest these evenings acted as a kind of informal education, passing down moral lessons and cultural history. Others argue that people simply enjoyed the comfort of familiar voices during cold nights. You listen to the tales, knowing that both possibilities may be true at once. The fire shifts, sending a tiny spark upward that quickly fades into the air. Another elder clears her throat and begins a gentler, quieter story. She speaks of her own mother, a woman with hands, always warm from baking bread, and a voice soft enough to calm even the rowdiest children. She describes a long-ago Thanksgiving when the entire family worked together to rescue the harvest after unexpected frost. The memory grows tender, the kind that makes the room fall still. A hush settles over the group. Even the children sense the weight of this moment. The woman's voice falters, ever so slightly, as she reaches the end of her story. She smiles, though her eyes shine with something deeper than amusement. Gratitude, love, memory. The room absorbs her words like the old wood absorbs the heat of the fire. Then, in perfect contrast, a boy pipes up with a story of his own. It is wildly inaccurate, somewhat exaggerated, and clearly invented on the spot. He claims he once saw a turkey run so fast that it outran his uncle's horse. The adults chuckle gently, indulging him. His sister shakes her head in disbelief, but the boy's enthusiasm is contagious. He stands and reenacts the turkey sprinting through the yard, arms flapping, boots stomping dramatically. The entire room erupts in laughter as he nearly loses his balance but regains it with the pride of a performer. Even the oldest members lean forward in amusement, enjoying the youthful chaos. The fire shifts again, releasing a deeper glow. Another story bubbles up, this one about a long-forgotten prank involving a misplaced pie and a very confused cat. The tale twists and turns, gaining embellishment from everyone who remembers it differently. You sense that these versions have grown over the years, adjusting themselves to suit the warmth of these nights. Someone pours warm cider into simple mugs and passes them around. The cider's sweetness lingers on your tongue, blending beautifully with the scent of wood smoke. A child leans against your arm, nodding off slightly, then quickly awakens as another story begins. A low voice starts a tale of a legendary traveler known for appearing in villages only during late autumn. Some say he could predict the weather. Others say he carried a satchel filled with tiny trinkets he left behind in unexpected places. The storyteller presents each detail with a twinkle in his eye, leaving just enough mystery to keep the listeners leaning forward. You feel the room relax with every shared memory. The warmth deepens. The stories stretch long and winding, creating a soft tapestry of moments woven from humor, history, and imagination. As the fire settles into a quieter crackle, someone begins humming a tune that was played earlier. Others join softly. The melody weaves through the lull in conversation, gentle and nostalgic. It feels like the room is exhaling together, content to rest in the glow of shared memories. The stories wind down naturally, leaving a peaceful hush in their wake. The hearth glows steady and calm, lighting every face with faint amber. You take a slow breath, absorbing the warmth, the connection, and the lingering sweetness of the stories told tonight. The evening continues its quiet drift, ready to usher you toward the heart of the feast that waits just beyond this circle of gentle light. You rise slowly from your seat by the hearth, feeling the soft pull of warmth on your back as you take a few steps toward the window. Outside, the fields stretch into the fading dusk, their edges touched by silver as night begins to settle. You press your fingers lightly to the glass. It feels cool, almost icy, and through it, you sense the deep quiet of land that has recently given its final offerings of the season. Harvest time has passed, leaving behind a mix of relief, gratitude, and the faint worry that always accompanies the arrival of winter. You walk toward the back door and step outside for a moment. The cold air greets you instantly, brushing across your cheeks with a sharp but invigorating touch. The ground crunches softly under your shoes. Frost crystals glimmer faintly in the low light, catching the last hints of sunset. You smell distant chimney smoke, drifting like a thin ribbon above the farms, scattered along the horizon. A familiar observation from agricultural diaries comes to mind. For most families in the early 19th century, Thanksgiving gained its meaning directly from the rhythm of the harvest. It was a moment to breathe after the final storage of grain, after the last apples were pressed, after root cellars were packed with vegetables and jars. As you stand here, looking at the fields resting under the first chill of winter, you feel that connection deeply. The rows of earth lie bare now, their stubble short and crisp. You trace the memory of recent weeks when these fields were bustling with activity. Hands pulling, cutting, lifting, voices calling across the rows, the steady creak of wagons, the faint smell of turned soil rising each morning. You sense the echo of all of it, lingering like a soft hum under the stillness. A man approaches from the barn, carrying a small lantern that flickers in the growing dark. He lifts it slightly in greeting. The warm glow illuminates his face, revealing cheeks reddened by cold and a satisfied fatigue that comes from months of hard work finally completed. He gestures for you to walk with him along the path that borders the field. You follow, the lantern swinging gently between you. Its warm circle of light makes the frost sparkle. With each step, the ground feels firm, resting, storing energy for another year. The man tells you quietly about the harvest, how the corn grew tall despite early doubts, how the apples ripened later than usual, how the pumpkins came in a surprising abundance, enough to supply pies for not just the family but several neighbors as well. As he speaks, a gentle curiosity surfaces in your thoughts, one that scholars often consider when studying rural life from this era. Some researchers believe that Thanksgiving acted almost like a symbolic closing ceremony for the agricultural year, marking the boundary between labor and rest. Others view it as a more flexible custom, shaped by family habits rather than seasonal necessity. You feel both interpretations in the cool air around you. This evening carries hints of closure and quiet celebration, yet it flows naturally, without strict formality. The man pauses at the fence and rests one arm upon the wooden rail. The wood feels cold beneath your fingertips. He points toward the dark shape of the orchard in the distance. Rows of bare branches stand like thin silhouettes, reaching upward. He explains how the family spent long days picking apples, sorting them carefully, and storing them for the winter. The memory warms his voice. He tells you about a moment earlier in the season when unexpected rain nearly threatened the crop. For days, the family worked under sheets of grey sky, determined not to let the weather claim their hard-earned labour. You imagine the mud clinging to their boots, the cold biting at their fingers, the satisfaction of knowing they saved nearly every apple. The lantern glows brighter as he speaks, casting dancing reflections across the frost. You walk onward until you reach the small barn. Inside, the air smells of hay, leather, and the soft musk of animals settling for the night. The lantern's light reveals neatly stacked bundles of dried corn, tied with twine in tidy rows. The golden husks rustle faintly as a draft slips through the wooden boards. A young girl sits on an overturned bucket, brushing the soft coat of a patient sheep. Her strokes are slow and soothing. When she looks up, her eyes reflect a peace that only quiet evening farm work can bring. A charming, lesser-known tradition flickers through your thoughts. Some families made small corn husk decorations after the harvest, tying bundles into little wreaths or figures as symbols of good fortune. You notice a few such decorations hanging from nails along the barn wall. Their simple shapes cast delicate shadows that shift with the lantern's movement. The girl tells you how she helped gather the last of the squash and potatoes from the garden. She describes how the soil felt cool but pliable, how she and her siblings worked quickly to finish before the first hard freeze. Her small hands mimic the motions as she speaks, brushing imaginary soil away. Her voice carries pride woven with innocence. As she continues brushing the sheep, a soft bleat echoes through the barn. The sound blends with the distant whisper of wind outside and the muted creaking of the barn beams. You lean against a wooden post, letting the peacefulness settle into your bones. The warmth of the lantern, the cold of the night, and the memory of the harvest all mingle in the air, creating a balance that feels ancient and steady. The man sets the lantern on a low stall door and checks the water bucket. The sheep shifts slightly, nudging his arm. He laughs quietly and scratches its head. Moments like this, small but steady, shape the life of families who depend on the land. These tasks never stop, even on holidays, but they carry a sense of gratitude rather than burden. You step back outside and look across the wide spread of fields once more. Darkness now covers the land, but you can still sense its quiet heartbeat. The harvest is behind you. The earth rests. Families gather. The holiday grows warmer inside every home, precisely because the land outside lies cold and still. As you walk toward the house, you feel the faint crunch of frost under your feet again. Your breath forms silver clouds. The glow of the windows pulls you closer, promising warmth, food, and voices. You take one last look at the fields. They wait in silence, but the memory of the season lingers gently in the air, shaping the gratitude that fills the night. You step inside. The warmth greets you instantly, and the feast waits, growing closer with every passing moment. You close the door against the cold evening air, letting the warmth of the house settle around your shoulders once more. But before long, you hear the distant sound of wagon wheels crunching over the frosty ground, followed by the slow clop of hooves. A faint lantern glow flickers through the window. Someone calls out from the front room that guests have finally arrived. You feel a ripple of excitement course through the house. In the 1800s, Thanksgiving often meant long journeys, sometimes risky ones, and every arrival carried the feel of a small triumph. You move toward the entryway just as the door swings open. A gust of cold air rushes in, carrying the scent of night and damp earth. Two figures step inside, wrapped tightly in wool coats. Their cheeks are flushed red from wind and effort. Snow dusts their shoulders even though the night itself looks relatively clear. They stamp their boots against the threshold, sending tiny crystals scattering like sparks. A familiar note from travel journals in this era crosses your mind. Reaching a relative's home for Thanksgiving sometimes required hours of travel by horse or wagon along dark and uneven roads. Travelers planned carefully, often packing extra blankets, lantern oil, and enough oats for their horses to ensure a safe journey. You can see all of those preparations now. A thick blanket has been draped over the wagon seat outside. The horse tied near the fence puffs out clouds of warm breath into the night. The newcomers step inside fully, removing their layers one by one. A woman unravels a long scarf from around her neck, revealing a smile warmed by exhaustion and relief. She hands over a small basket wrapped in cloth, explaining that it contains late-season pears saved for the occasion. A man beside her carries a small jug of cider. He sets it down with careful pride and claps his hands together, trying to coax warmth back into his stiff fingers. Someone leads them closer to the fire. A pair of children rush forward to take their coats, giggling as they struggle with the heavy fabric. The adults laugh softly, guiding the children to hang the garments where they will dry. The room fills with greetings, embraces, and grateful murmurs. You can feel how much this moment means. Distance, cold, and darkness have been overcome, turning the simple act of stepping through a doorway into something celebratory. A lesser-known travel custom from this era flickers in your memory. Visitors often carried a small token from their own hearth, such as a sprig of dried herb or a scrap of woven fabric, which they gave to their hosts upon arrival. The gesture symbolized shared warmth and goodwill. You spot such a token now. One guest pulls a small bundle of dried lavender from her pocket and offers it with a shy smile. The scent drifts gently into the air, soothing and familiar. More voices echo from outside. Another wagon approaches. Hooves crunch, lanterns sway. You move to the doorway again, joining others as they help the next travelers down from their seat. A man supports his elderly mother as she carefully steps onto the frosty ground. Her hands tremble slightly, but her expression glows with determination. She announces that she would not miss this gathering for anything in the world. The warmth of her conviction spreads through the room even before she crosses the threshold. The sound of metal harness rings fills the air as someone unhitches the horse. The animal shakes its mane, releasing a shower of frost. A teenage boy takes the reins and leads the horse toward the small barn. He moves with quiet competence, his breath rising in white puffs. Meanwhile, inside the house, the guests shed their layers and settle into the welcoming glow. Their boots leave faint wet prints on the floor. Their hands thaw slowly over the fire. Someone hands them warm cider in simple mugs. The sweetness eases into their tired bodies, and their shoulders relax visibly. While you watch, a thought shared by historians floats into your mind. Some researchers debate how far families typically traveled for Thanksgiving in the early 19th century. Some accounts describe journeys spanning many miles, even entire days. Others suggest that most gatherings remained small and local, shaped by the difficulty of long travel during the cold season. The truth, you sense, may vary from family to family. Tonight, in this house, the distances have clearly been significant. The arrivals feel momentous. A young girl tugs your sleeve and leads you outside for a moment. She wants to show you something. You step onto the porch, adjusting your shawl against the cold. She points toward the road, where a dim glow sways in the distance. Another lantern, another traveler approaching. The girl grins, hopping in place with excitement. She whispers that she has been counting the arrivals, and this will make the 5th. You both wait as the glow draws nearer. Soon, the faint outline of a wagon appears against the dark sky. The horse trots steadily, snorting occasionally as it sees the welcoming house ahead. When the wagon reaches the gate, 2 young men hop down with loud exclamations about the cold, laughing at their own dramatic shivers. They help their elderly aunt to the ground, guiding her gently. Her shoes crunch against the frost as she steadies herself. One of them lifts a covered pot from the wagon bed, explaining that it holds a treasured family recipe kept warm beneath several blankets. The pot is carried indoors like a prized relic. The older woman leans on your arm for a moment as she walks inside. Her fingers feel cold and delicate, but her spirit burns bright behind her eyes. You watch as the household fills with voices. Every arrival sends a fresh wave of warmth through the rooms. The fire crackles with renewed pride, as though greeting each traveler personally. Chairs scrape across floors to make more space. The table receives additions. Laughter grows louder, richer, layering itself over the earlier calm like a second blanket. Someone outside begins tending to the horses, brushing their coats and covering them with thick wool blankets. The animals nuzzle gratefully, warm breath rising in steady clouds. The barn becomes a small island of gentleness in the night, its quietness contrasting beautifully with the bustling joy inside the house. More guests pour through the door, until the entire home hums with voices, soft and overlapping. Every face seems lit from within. People retell the details of their journeys, sharing small accounts of icy puddles, creaking wagon wheels, startled deer, and the relief of seeing the familiar curve of the house appear through the dark. You stand in the middle of the room for a moment, letting the scene settle into your senses. This is the heart of the evening. A gathering not just of family, but of courage, perseverance, and deep affection carried across chilly miles. You feel warmed not just by the hearth but by the glow that comes from reunion. As everyone settles, shedding the cold and soaking in the light, you realize that in this era, travel is not simply movement, it is devotion, it is effort shaped by love. And tonight, every arrival becomes a story in itself. You follow the others toward the dining room, ready to witness how the feast will unfold with every seat finally filled. You return inside with the last gust of cold air trailing behind you, closing the door gently as the room absorbs its final group of travelers. The hum of reunited voices softens now, deepening into a warm murmur of comfort and settling. As the guests take their seats, shed their shawls, and warm their hands by the hearth, another quiet tradition begins to unfold. One that is not loud or grand, yet woven deeply into the fabric of 19th century Thanksgivings. The exchange of small handmade gifts. You notice it first in the way people reach into pockets and baskets with the kind of care reserved for fragile treasures. A woman near the table unwraps a parcel of cloth to reveal a set of embroidered handkerchiefs, each one stitched with delicate vines and tiny berries. The recipient, her sister, presses a hand to her heart and gently runs her fingers across the threads. The cloth feels soft and slightly textured from countless hours of needlework. The detail preserved in personal letters from this era rises naturally into your thoughts. Many families exchange simple handmade items during holidays, not as formal presents but as tokens of affection. These tokens carried no monetary value, yet they held weight because each represented time, patience, and quiet devotion. Tonight, you see that idea unfolding in countless small gestures. Near the window, a man hands his brother a small wooden carving. The carving resembles a horse mid-stride, its legs and mane shaped with surprising detail. The wood is smooth under your fingertips when you briefly touch it. Its scent carries the warm memory of pine. The brother smiles with genuine surprise, clearly recognizing the work that went into each carved line. Across the room, a young girl opens her basket and pulls out a set of tiny wax candles she molded herself. Their surface is slightly uneven, but they smell faintly of honey and herbs. She presents them to her grandmother, who responds with a kiss on her forehead. The child beams with pride, clutching the empty basket against her chest. While observing these quiet exchanges, a small detail from rural folklore reaches your awareness. Some households believed that a handcrafted item given on Thanksgiving carried with it a blessing for the coming winter. Whether a knitted mitten, a carved trinket, or a simple scrap of embroidery, the belief held that the object would bring warmth or good luck to its new owner. You see a hint of that belief in the way people receive these gifts, touching them gently as though holding something more than simple material. A young woman sits near the parlor table, unraveling a tiny package tied with twine. Inside lies a small book of folded pages, bound by hand. The ink on the cover is slightly faded, but the lettering remains clear. It is a collection of short verses copied by her younger cousin. She reads a few lines silently, then holds the book close to her chest with gratitude glowing in her eyes. As you continue observing, another thought comes quietly, one that researchers sometimes discuss when examining household crafts from the early 19th century. Scholars note how handmade gifts served as markers of connection at a time when luxury goods were scarce and travel was difficult. Some emphasize their practical value, while others highlight their emotional significance. Watching these exchanges now, you sense how both interpretations hold truth. Each gift tonight is practical in some way, yet also deeply personal. A man seated near the hearth pulls a cloth from his coat pocket and reveals a small leather pouch he stitched by hand. The seams are neat, the leather soft from careful tanning. He presents it to his nephew, who immediately begins studying the stitching. The young man runs his thumb along the smooth edges, murmuring admiration. The uncle laughs quietly, pleased by the reaction. Nearby, a grandmother gives her grandson a string of wooden beads polished to a soft sheen. She had been carving them slowly throughout the autumn, a bead or two each night while sitting by the fire. The boy touches them reverently, feeling each bead's smooth surface. He drapes the strand around his neck, standing a little taller with pride. A girl steps toward you shyly, holding a small trinket fashioned from braided yarn. She explains that it is meant to be a bookmark. When she places it in your hand, you notice how soft the fibers feel, and how carefully the colors have been chosen. She watches your reaction with wide, hopeful eyes. When you smile, she smiles back with relief and delight. Someone nearby unwraps a small square of woven cloth trimmed with simple lace. Another opens a jar of homemade salve made from herbs grown in the summer garden. A third receives a charm shaped from river clay, hardened gently near the fire. As each gift appears, you realize that this part of the evening creates its own gentle glow. No one announces their present with fanfare. Instead, every exchange feels like a whisper of affection, a quiet acknowledgement of shared life. Children chatter excitedly about the things they made. Adults exchange modest looks, as if embarrassed by how much time they spent perfecting a simple craft. The room fills with soft laughter, the kind that rumbles gently in the chest rather than bursting out loudly. A small, aging dog wanders around the room, sniffing each gift curiously. Someone drapes a small knitted square across the dog's back, declaring it a modest but heartfelt blanket. The dog seems unsure of its purpose, but accepts it with dignified patience. In another corner, two women examine a woven basket crafted by a relative. The weaving is tight and precise. The reeds feel smooth yet strong beneath your fingertips. One woman comments that such a basket will last for years, good for gathering apples or carrying cloth to the wash house. As you listen and watch, you feel the room shift subtly again. The earlier excitement of arrivals has softened into warmth. The chatter of neighbors and cousins drifts like low music. The smell of roasting turkey and simmering vegetables reaches you from the kitchen, reminding everyone that the feast is growing near. A small hush falls over the room as one of the older men unwraps a carefully folded scarf. The scarf is hand-knitted, its pattern simple but steady. He holds it in both hands, his eyes softening with emotion. He thanks the giver with a quiet sincerity that makes the room fall still for a moment. The silence does not last long. Soon, soft conversation rises again, full of appreciation, gentle teasing, and affectionate nostalgia. The gifts now rest on laps, chairs, tables, and mantelpieces. They look small compared to the feast awaiting the family, yet somehow they feel just as essential. You take one more slow look around the room. Candles flicker, children giggle, adults sip warm cider, and in the midst of it all, these modest, handcrafted offerings shine like tiny lanterns of connection. As the final ribbon is tied and the last gift unwrapped, someone calls from the kitchen that the meal is nearly ready. A ripple of anticipation moves through the house. People rise, stretching their arms, collecting their small treasures before moving toward the awaiting table. You follow them, feeling the soft glow of handmade affection wrap around you. Ahead lies the heart of the feast. Behind you lingers the quiet sweetness of gifts shaped by human hands. You follow the flow of people as they drift toward the quieter side of the parlor, where a small table has been set with newspapers, pamphlets, and a few well-worn books. The firelight flickers gently across the printed pages, making the ink glimmer faintly as if waking the words from a long rest. This part of the evening feels different from the music and storytelling. It carries a thoughtful tone, shaped by conversation, reflection, and the slow exchange of ideas that gather naturally around printed words. In the early 1800s, newspapers were treasured windows into a world that stretched far beyond the farm, and tonight they become small lanterns guiding curious minds. A man unfolds a newspaper with careful precision. The pages crackle softly, releasing a faint scent of ink and paper that has grown warm from sitting near the hearth. He smooths the sheet across his knee and begins to read aloud a short column about recent events in the region. His voice is steady and clear, though he occasionally pauses to decipher a smudged word or faded line. A detail often mentioned in historical accounts surfaces gently in your thoughts. During this period, newspapers were not delivered daily to every household. Many families shared subscriptions or borrowed papers from neighbors. A single issue might circulate for days or weeks. Tonight, the newspaper in the man's hands has likely traveled through several homes already, gathering small creases, faint smudges, and soft folds like footprints of its journey. Another guest picks up a pamphlet lying near a stack of hymnals. The pamphlet contains a reflection on gratitude, printed by a small regional press. The woman reads a passage quietly, then shares a sentence aloud. The words speak of harvests, hardships, and the quiet strength of community. Her voice softens near the end, and people nod gently in agreement. Across the room, two older men lean over another newspaper, their heads nearly touching as they read an article about agricultural improvements. They murmur to one another about new tools, new techniques, and the possibility of saving a little more grain next season. Their whispering blends with the crackle of the fire, creating a soothing rhythm. A younger man enters carrying a thin stack of printed sermons. He explains that he borrowed them from a nearby meeting house earlier in the week. These sermons are not meant for strict reading tonight, but they spark conversation about the year's challenges and blessings. People speak softly, offering thoughts shaped by months of work, weather, travel, and change. As you settle into a nearby chair, an interesting point from cultural studies comes to mind. Some scholars describe 19th century Thanksgiving as a holiday that slowly absorbed written ideas from sermons, editorials, and newspapers. These printed opinions helped shape the meaning of gratitude across different communities. Other scholars argue that families largely ignored printed messages, instead relying on their own traditions and lived experiences. You can feel the blend of both influences here. People read and reflect, yet they anchor their understanding in their own lives. A girl wanders over and takes a seat beside you. She holds a small illustrated book filled with simple etchings and short verses. She flips through the pages, lingering on a picture of a harvest scene. You watch as her finger traces the outline of a field worker holding a bundle of wheat. She whispers that she wants to learn to draw pictures like this one day. Her voice is soft but full of earnest hope. Nearby, two women hold a newspaper between them. One points to a short story printed in the corner, a sentimental piece about a family reunited after a long journey. She begins reading it aloud, her tone warm and expressive. The story unfolds gently, filled with nostalgia and soft edges. The listeners sigh at the sweetest parts, smiling at the familiar emotions tucked inside the simple narrative. A man sets aside a pamphlet and picks up a small book containing speeches from a recent civic gathering. He comments on the language, admiring its careful structure. Others gather to listen as he reads a particularly powerful section about unity and perseverance. His voice carries the weight of the message through the room, and for a moment, everything grows still. Then someone breaks the solemnity with a light-hearted remark about politicians, and laughter springs up, warm and unforced. A modest but charming detail from old family records drifts across your thoughts. Some households saved clippings from newspapers throughout the year, storing them in small boxes or between the pages of books. These clippings ranged from recipes to weather predictions to amusing anecdotes. They often reappeared on quiet holiday evenings like this one. You notice such a collection now. A small wooden box sits on the table. Inside are scraps of paper, folded neatly. Children gather around as a woman lifts one and reads an old joke printed months ago. The children giggle, even though the humor feels quaint by modern standards. A boy reads over his father's shoulder, stumbling occasionally over unfamiliar words. His father gently corrects him, pointing to each syllable with a patient finger. The boy's face brightens each time he gets a sentence right. These moments, small yet meaningful, become part of the evening's quiet glow. A man near the hearth begins discussing a recent editorial about changes in farming practices. His tone is thoughtful, and he gestures occasionally with his mug of cider. Another man listens intently, offering counterpoints with equal respect. Their discussion remains calm, shaped by genuine interest rather than competition. Their voices blend with the crackling fire, creating a thoughtful melody. One woman lifts a printed almanac and opens to the section forecasting winter weather. She reads predictions of snow, frost, and chilly winds. The room reacts with a mix of groans and good-natured teasing. A young boy insists that the almanac is always wrong, declaring that he can predict the weather better by watching birds at dawn. The adults laugh softly, amused by his confidence. A thoughtful silence drapes the room for a moment as the fire settles into a steady, glowing bed of embers. People turn pages softly, the rustle blending with the low murmur of conversation. The printed words guide reflections about the past year. Some speak of losses, others whisper of new beginnings. Many simply let their thoughts drift along the gentle current of the evening. Someone reads a short excerpt about gratitude from a regional publication. The words speak about the simple blessings of food, family, health, and shared labor. Not grand achievements, but the quiet, sustaining moments that shape the fabric of daily life. You feel the truth of those words deep within your chest. Children lean sleepily against their parents. Adults sip slowly from their mugs. The glow from the lamps casts warm pools of light across the printed pages. The atmosphere feels tender, grounded, full of quiet wisdom. You take in the scene, the murmuring voices, the rustling pages, the warm scent of cider, the low crackle of the hearth. In this moment, Printed words become not a distraction from the holiday, but a soft companion. They offer stories, ideas, memories, and gentle sparks of curiosity. They help shape the inner world of the evening, guiding thought in peaceful directions. As someone places the final newspaper aside, the room settles again into a comfortable hush. The feast waits just beyond these thoughtful moments. People rise slowly, stretching arms and legs stiff from sitting. Conversations drift naturally toward the promise of dinner. You stand with them, feeling the warmth of reflection settle within you like an ember carried forward from the fire. The evening deepens, the holiday gathers its final glow, and you move toward the dining room again, ready for the next unfolding chapter. You walk toward the kitchen doorway again, just as a new wave of voices rises softly from the entry hall. This time, the tone is different. Curious accents mingle with familiar ones, forming a blend of sounds that hints at another quiet truth of 19th century America. Many families celebrating Thanksgiving were shaped not only by old colonial traditions, but also by the customs of newcomers who had recently set foot on this soil. You sense that you are about to witness how those influences slip gently into the day, sometimes welcomed deliberately, sometimes woven in without anyone realizing. You step into the hallway and find several guests removing their outer layers. Their clothing is similar to others in the room, yet subtle details reveal their origins. A scarf, woven in a distinctive pattern, buttons carved in a style common in regions far across the ocean, a woman's hair wrapped in a cloth dyed with pigments not locally found. These hints speak quietly, telling their own stories even before a word is spoken. A detail often noted in community records settles naturally into your thoughts. During the early 1800s, America was already home to immigrants from Ireland, Scotland, Germany, the Netherlands, and beyond. Many of these newcomers lived in rural towns, working farms, tending mills, or joining small workshops. Their traditions sometimes blended with existing customs, adding new flavors to holidays like Thanksgiving without anyone naming the changes explicitly. A woman from the newly arrived group holds a small basket lined with a patterned cloth. Inside are rolls baked with caraway seeds, a familiar bread from her homeland. She offers them shyly to the hostess, who accepts them with grateful warmth. The scent of the rolls floats into the air, faintly sweet and gently herbal. A few children peek curiously inside the basket, their noses wrinkling with interest as they inhale the unfamiliar aroma. Nearby, a man unwraps a jar filled with tangy, fermented vegetables, finely shredded and dotted with spices. The jar's scent is sharp at first, but it mellows quickly into something earthy and inviting. He explains quietly that it is a special dish often enjoyed in his home country during cold months. The family members exchange glances, intrigued. The man smiles with a mixture of pride and nervousness, unsure whether the dish will be welcomed or politely ignored. A charming detail from local diaries drifts through your memory. Some households adopted portions of immigrant recipes and incorporated them into their own holiday traditions. A German-style pudding would appear alongside pumpkin pie. A Dutch spice blend might be added to roasted apples. These contributions slowly shifted the flavor of the holiday without diminishing its original spirit. You sense the beginnings of that transformation tonight. In the parlor, a young woman sits on a low stool with a spindle in her lap. Her hands move with practiced skill as she twists wool into fine thread. Children watch with fascination. She explains that this is how her mother taught her to spin, back in a small village far across the sea. Her accent lilts gently through the room, adding music to her words. When she finishes the demonstration, she hands a small piece of the newly spun thread to a child, who treasures it instantly, as if it were a rare gem. Nearby, two men begin discussing farming techniques from their respective homelands. One speaks of terraced fields in the hills he left behind, while the other describes the rocky soil he once worked near a windswept coastline. Their hands gesture animatedly, drawing invisible maps in the air. A local farmer listens intently, nodding and asking questions, eager to glean any wisdom useful for the next year's crop. A thoughtful question, often raised by historians, touches your mind as you listen. How deeply did immigrant practices shape Thanksgiving in the decades before it became a national holiday? Some experts argue that new arrivals adopted American customs quickly to feel included, while others suggest that immigrants quietly but significantly influenced the holiday from within. Tonight, you witness both tendencies at play. The newcomers blend into the gathering with ease, yet they also bring flavors and ideas that are distinctly their own. A young girl from the guest group approaches a group of local children. She carries a small handful of wooden beads painted in bright colors. She offers them shyly, explaining that she made them during her family's voyage across the ocean. The children accept them with delight, then immediately begin creating games based on the shapes and colors. Their laughter fills the room, proof that new friendships form easily when gifts come from small, earnest hands. In the kitchen, one of the visiting women kneels beside the hostess to admire the pies cooling on the sill. She gently touches the crimped edges of a crust and offers a quiet compliment. Then, with a spark of bravery, she asks whether she might add a small pinch of her own spice mixture to one of the apple pies before serving. The hostess agrees without hesitation. She watches with curiosity as the woman opens a tiny pouch containing a blend of warm, fragrant spices unfamiliar to her. The scent rises like a whisper of distant lands. A lesser-known but delightful culinary note appears in your thoughts. Some immigrant families contributed spices, herbs, and baking techniques that eventually became beloved parts of American holiday cooking. Ginger, allspice, and certain varieties of nutmeg found their way into pies and puddings through such exchanges. You sense that this small addition to tonight's pie may become part of the family's tradition in years to come. In the dining room, two elderly guests discuss the differences in their country's harvest celebrations. One describes a festival filled with music and dance. The other recalls a solemn day, marked by quiet reflection and prayer. Their voices drift pleasantly, weaving contrasts and similarities into a shared tapestry. They sip warm cider as they speak. The heat fogs their glasses slightly, blurring the world into something even gentler. A small boy interrupts them excitedly. He explains that he has learned a new word from one of the visiting families. He tries to pronounce it carefully, stumbling through the unfamiliar sounds. The adults listen with smiles, encouraging his efforts. The new word feels like a tiny bridge between worlds. You watch as the room shifts gently, the local customs embracing the visiting ones without fuss or resistance. These exchanges occur quietly, casually, yet their impact lingers in the air like a subtle fragrance. The holiday feels richer now, layered with stories, flavors, and traditions shaped by multiple homelands. As the final preparations for the feast draw near, people move easily around one another. Local families, immigrant families, newcomers, old friends, everyone contributes something unique, something shaped by the places they once called home. You take a slow breath, absorbing the harmony in the room. The scent of the spiced apple pie begins to drift toward you. Laughter rises. Chairs are gathered for the meal. And in this warm, glowing space, you sense the holiday evolving, gentle and natural, expanding to include every voice. You follow the others toward the dining table, ready to witness how these blended traditions will sit side by side on plates filled with gratitude. You make your way back toward the dining room, but before you reach the table, you sense a shift in the atmosphere. Not a heavy one, not enough to dull the warmth of the evening, but a faint ripple beneath the surface. Guests speak in low tones now, their voices weaving between cheerful greetings and something quieter, more uncertain. The mingling of opinions, memories, and differing worldviews begins to drift into the space the way autumn fog creeps across a chilled field. Even on a holiday meant for gratitude, the people of the early 19th century carry their concerns, their hopes, and their disagreements with them. You pause near the hearth and notice two men engaged in a soft but spirited exchange. One stirs his mug of cider with slow, measured movements, while the other gestures lightly with his hand. Their expressions stay polite, but you sense an undercurrent of differing convictions. The topic, the state of the young nation. Not angry, not confrontational, simply thoughtful. Two perspectives meeting like slow currents in the same river. A detail recorded in letters from this era comes to mind. Thanksgiving gatherings often became quiet spaces for families to share news, debate ideas, and discuss the changes sweeping across communities. Conversations flowed naturally between harvest updates and political reflections. The holiday did not silence worry. It allowed it to soften, to unspool in company that felt safe. Nearby, a woman sits with her sister, both holding small cups of warm cider. One mentions a recent sermon that spoke of national unity. The other mentions a newspaper essay that questioned whether unity comes from shared principles or shared struggles. Their voices remain gentle, yet their words carry delicate weight. The hearth glows behind them, casting their profiles in softened gold. As you listen, A small but meaningful slice of social observation rises into your thoughts. Some families considered Thanksgiving a moment to acknowledge not only blessings but also the unresolved tensions of their communities. Economic worries, shifting trade, land disputes, and the growing complexity of regional identities all found their way into hushed evening discussions. People spoke softly out of respect, but they did not entirely hide their concerns. A young man enters, cheeks flushed from the cold outside. He sits near an older uncle and shares news from the town. A dispute has arisen regarding land boundaries near a river. Voices were raised at a recent meeting. The uncle listens, nodding with thoughtful concern. He offers quiet counsel, speaking from decades of lived experience. The young man sighs, visibly relieved to share the weight of his worry. In another corner, two women discuss the cost of flour. They whisper about rising prices and the difficulty some neighbors faced during the past year. The conversation stays sympathetic, full of care. One mentions that she brought extra bread tonight precisely because she knew a nearby family had faced hardship. Compassion threads through their words like a warm stitch. A small group of immigrants from earlier still sit near the parlor table. They discuss the complexity of adapting to new customs, new laws, new expectations. One speaks about struggling to find steady work during the year. Another describes the uncertainty that accompanied their voyage across the ocean. A third offers a hopeful comment about how welcome they feel tonight. Their voices rise and fall in a gentle rhythm, as if balancing sorrow and gratitude with equal tenderness. While listening, a reflective idea often considered by historians touches your mind. Researchers debate how deeply political and social tension affected early Thanksgiving gatherings. Some argue that families avoided controversial topics entirely, preferring harmony. Others suggest that these conversations were common, even necessary, helping households process the challenges of living in a transforming society. Observing this room, you see how both interpretations might be true. People choose their words carefully, yet they speak with honesty. In the far corner, a man and woman quietly discuss the recent movement of families heading westward. The man expresses concern about leaving established communities. The woman speaks with curiosity about new opportunities. Their voices hold no argument, only the gentle pull of different dreams. You sense how such choices shaped countless households during this period. A boy sits on the rug at their feet, drawing simple shapes in the soft candlelight. He hums to himself, oblivious to the quiet debate above him. His presence softens the moment, reminding everyone that uncertainties of the future coexist with the steady beat of family life. You notice another conversation by the window. A middle-aged woman expresses worry about illness spreading in a neighboring town. Her friend places a hand gently on her arm, offering comfort and promising to share remedies passed down from her grandmother. The tension dissolves slightly, replaced by gratitude. In a nearby chair, an elderly man shares memories of political disagreements from his youth. He chuckles at how fiercely he once defended his opinions, then sighs with relief at how age has brought him to quieter reflections. His voice carries both wisdom and weariness. The others listen with respect. A soft hush rolls through the room as someone mentions a recent editorial about the moral responsibilities of citizens. The words spark thoughtful nods. People sip cider slowly. The fire crackles, filling the subtle pause with warmth. Even disagreements feel softened tonight, shaped by shared presence rather than division. A small but curious cultural note slips into your awareness. Some families believed that speaking openly about worries on Thanksgiving allowed the old year's troubles to be soothed before winter settled in fully. The belief held that airing concerns in a respectful atmosphere helped prevent resentment from lingering in the months ahead. You sense that custom at play now, woven into the cadence of the room. Gradually, the tone shifts again. The conversations lighten. Someone jokes gently about a horse who refuses to pull the wagon uphill. Another teases a cousin about falling asleep during last year's prayer. Laughter rises softly, smoothing away any leftover strain. Even the more serious discussions dissolve into comfortable companionship. People begin making their way toward the table once more. Their steps carry relief, connection, and renewed warmth. The quiet tensions of life have been shared, not to dampen the holiday, but to honor its role as a gathering of real experiences, both bright and shadowed. You take your place among them, feeling that balance settle within you. Gratitude and uncertainty coexist tonight, just as they did for countless families across early America. Yet here, together, the warmth always outweighs the worry. The feast waits, the voices soften, the night deepens. and you follow the others toward the glow that promises comfort, conversation, and the next chapter of this unfolding holiday. You follow the gentle pull of voices and lantern light toward the front door, and soon you find yourself stepping into the cold evening air once more. The warmth of the house fades behind you like a sigh, replaced by a cool hush that spreads across the yard. The world outside feels completely transformed. The earlier bustle of arrivals and neighborly exchanges has quieted. Now the night lies still, patient, and full of soft reflections. A thin layer of frost glimmers across the grass, catching the faint glow from the windows. The sky stretches overhead in deep shades of indigo, sprinkled with early winter stars. You inhale deeply. The air tastes clean, cold, and almost sweet. Your breath forms pale clouds that drift upward slowly before dissolving. A detail often mentioned in journals from this period floats gently into your thoughts. After the bustle of preparation and conversation, many families enjoyed a short walk outdoors to ease the mind and settle the spirit before the meal. Some walked to admire the fields, others to share quiet thoughts, and some simply stepped outside to appreciate the cold, which made the return indoors feel even cozier. You wander down the small path leading away from the house. Gravel crunches under your shoes. A gentle breeze brushes your cheeks with a tender sting. You pull your shawl tighter and watch faint ribbons of smoke drift from the chimney behind you. The house glows like a warm lantern in the night. A pair of cousins walks a few steps ahead, their whispers soft and excited. They point toward the horizon, where a sliver of moon rises just above the tree line. Its pale light spills across the fields, turning the plowed earth into a quiet patchwork of silver and shadow. The cousins' faces brighten. They begin telling each other small stories about the moon, embellishing them with childish exaggeration. A woman strolls nearby, arm linked with her sister's. They speak quietly about the year behind them, touching on moments of hardship and unexpected blessings. Their footsteps fall in rhythm, slow and thoughtful. Every few seconds, one of them pauses to admire the stars, as though reminded of something comforting and eternal. As you continue walking, a gentle detail from local memories rises into your awareness. Families often used these evening walks to check on the animals, the barn, or the state of the fields. Tasks blended invisibly with reflection, tying the holiday not only to people but to the land that sustained them. A man ahead carries a small lantern. Its golden glow casts a soft circle on the ground. He stops by the fence and leans on the wooden rail. You walk closer and join him in silence. The fence feels cold beneath your hands. Beyond it, the fields stretch wide and quiet. He speaks quietly about the coming winter and the chores that will fill the next few months. His voice is calm and steady, shaped by years of adapting to the seasons. A thoughtful idea, often noted by historians, touches your mind. Researchers suggest these evening walks created a natural pause between the preparations of the day and the feast that followed, a small, gentle interlude that allowed families to shift their minds into a slower, more reflective state. You feel that shift within you now, as the cold air slows your breathing and the night sky invites quiet thoughts. In the distance, you spot a group of children kneeling beside a patch of frozen grass. They giggle quietly as they press their palms to the frost, admiring the patterns left behind. One child breathes warm air onto a leaf, watching frost crystals melt and then refreeze. Another child sighs happily and lies down to make a frost angel, brushing her arms gently through the brittle blades of grass. A grandmother stands nearby, watching them with a mix of amusement and fondness. She calls out occasionally to remind them not to wander too far. Her breath fogs the air. Her shawl flutters slightly in the breeze. Her presence feels grounding. You wander further up the road, where the lanterns from the house glow faintly behind you. A young couple walks hand in hand. They whisper about plans for spring, sharing hopes for the set of vegetables they want to plant next year. Their voices blend with the quiet creaking of the frost-stiffened branches above. A quirky bit of seasonal lore enters your thoughts. Some families believed that if you walked outside on Thanksgiving evening and saw a shooting star, the coming year would bring unexpected fortune. Whether or not anyone truly trusted the idea, people still looked upward with a tiny flicker of hope. You find yourself doing the same now, scanning the sky with calm anticipation. The night feels heavier but peaceful. The distant hoot of an owl echoes faintly from the woods. The wind carries a soft rustle from the few leaves still clinging stubbornly to branches. The smell of wood smoke drifts from several chimneys across the valley, creating a sense of shared warmth despite the distance. You turn back toward the house, Light spills from the windows in warm rectangles. The sound of voices drifts toward you in faint, melodic waves. People inside laugh softly, their silhouettes moving gently behind the curtains. As you near the door, the cold seems to deepen for a final moment. It makes you inhale sharply, filling your lungs with crisp air. Then you step inside again, and the warmth wraps around you instantly, comforting and familiar. Your cheeks tingle from the change in temperature. Your hands thaw slowly. The fragrance of roasted turkey, herbs, and pies settles into your senses again, with a soft, welcoming embrace. The short walk has quieted your thoughts, softened the edges of the day, and prepared your spirit for the feast waiting ahead. You wipe the frost from your sleeves, take a slow breath, and step into the dining room where the heart of Thanksgiving is ready to unfold. You step into the dining room again, letting the warmth wash over you as your fingers slowly thaw from the cold walk. The glow from the candles softens the room into an oasis of golden light. The table stands ready, fully prepared now for the heart of the evening. Chairs gather around it like old friends. Quilted runners and simple cloth napkins rest gently in place. The scents of roasting turkey, herbs, fresh bread, and warm pie drift together in a fragrant cloud, so comforting that your shoulders loosen without your permission. The guests take their seats one by one, murmuring softly as they settle in. Children wiggle toward their designated spots, trying to sit still while their excitement wobbles under the surface. Adults take deeper, steadier breaths, letting the warmth seep into them. You sense the entire house exhale in a quiet wave as the room becomes a cradle of comfort. A detail, often written in family journals of the era, comes to mind. People cherished the moment of taking their seats on Thanksgiving because it marked the shift from preparation to presence. Everything that needed doing had been done. The day's worries softened. The next hours belonged to gathering, eating, and resting. Tradition flowed naturally from that stillness. You run your hand lightly along the back of the chair next to you. The wood feels smooth, worn from years of use. When you take your seat, the cushion sighs ever so faintly. You fold your napkin across your lap, feeling the gentle texture of the fabric beneath your fingertips. A child beside you swings his legs under the table, his shoes tapping lightly against the wooden floor. His sister nudges him with her elbow, giving him the kind of stern look only older siblings can deliver. He goes still for a full 2 seconds, before his foot begins tapping again, in smaller, more controlled bursts. You smile quietly. Even this restlessness adds a tender charm to the moment. A woman rises, smoothing her dress as she steps to the head of the table. Her voice carries a soft steadiness as she welcomes everyone. She speaks of gratitude for safe travels, for the harvest behind them, for the warmth around them. Her eyes shine a little as she glances at each person in turn. The room falls silent, wrapped in her sincerity. A charming tradition noted in early New England households drifts across your thoughts. Families sometimes passed a moment of silence before speaking or serving the food, allowing each person to reflect privately. You notice that happening now. The hush settles gently, as though someone draped a soft quilt over the room. Then the quiet breaks in the sweetest way. A toddler, unaware of the solemn moment, lets out a soft hiccup. The room ripples with muffled laughter that lifts the mood instantly. Even the most serious elders smile, their eyes crinkling warmly. As people begin speaking again, the turkey appears from the kitchen, carried carefully by 2 sets of steady hands. The bird is golden brown, its skin crisp and glistening, its aroma deep and layered. You feel the moment stretch slightly, as though time wishes to admire the centerpiece before allowing the next motion. The carving begins. Someone slices carefully into the turkey, revealing tender meat beneath the crisp skin. Plates are passed down the table. Steam rises in small curls. Children lean forward eagerly, eyes shining. While watching, a thoughtful idea often mentioned by cultural historians crosses your mind. Some researchers suggest that the act of sharing food at one table, even in such a simple setting, served as a symbolic reminder of unity at a time when families were spread far across rural landscapes. Others believe it reflected a more ancient rhythm, one tied directly to the land and the seasons. Tonight, you feel both ideas merging quietly into the glow of candlelight. Bowls of mashed potatoes make their way around the table. Someone adds gravy with a careful hand, the warm liquid pooling across the creamy surface. A platter of roasted root vegetables follows. The roasted carrots glisten with butter. The turnips carry a soft, earthy aroma, and the onions have melted into golden sweetness. A girl beside you takes a deep sniff of the vegetables and closes her eyes, savoring the scent before even lifting her fork. Her expression is full of appreciation far beyond her age. Another dish arrives, filled with stuffing rich with herbs, onions, and bread. The scent of sage rises as soon as the lid is lifted. People murmur their delight. Next comes the cranberry relish, its ruby red glow shining like a jewel in the candlelight. The tart aroma adds a bright counterpoint to the heavier dishes. As plates fill, conversation softens into a gentle hum. People speak in low tones about the journeys they made to arrive here. Others recall small moments from the year, sharing fond memories and quiet reflections. Some compliment the pies cooling in the kitchen, even though they have not yet tasted them. Their voices feel woven together, forming a warm tapestry of companionship. The boy at the end of the table tries to sneak an extra serving of bread. His mother catches him with a raised eyebrow, but she smiles as she passes him a piece anyway. He beams with triumph. Nearby, a man describes how the harvest nearly failed earlier in the season, only to thrive unexpectedly after a late burst of sunshine. His voice carries admiration for the land, tinged with humility. The woman beside him adds a memory about the planting season, recalling how cold winds challenged the first sprouts. As you listen, a gentle debate arises between two cousins about the best way to roast a turkey. One prefers slow roasting near a lower heat. The other insists that a hotter oven seals in the juices. Their exchange remains good-natured, filled with teasing and laughter rather than insistence. The room glows with their playful disagreement. You feel warmth radiating not only from the hearth but from the shared gratitude filling the space. The meal unfolds in slow, savoring movements. Forks scrape plates gently. Mugs touch the table with soft taps. A child asks for more cranberry, accidentally knocking over his spoon. A nearby aunt catches it mid-fall with impressive reflexes, earning applause from the table. As the main course continues, you notice how everyone leans closer to one another. The air feels thick with affection, soft with comfort, rich with gratitude. Even the simplest gestures carry meaning. A woman refills her brother's cup without being asked. A teenage girl helps her grandmother cut her meat. A visiting uncle tells a quiet joke that makes his shy niece laugh into her napkin. You take your time eating, letting each bite settle warmly in your chest. Roasted turkey melts softly on your tongue. The stuffing's herbs bring memories of the kitchen earlier in the day. The potatoes soothe like a blanket. The cranberry adds a little spark of brightness. Slowly, plates empty. People lean back in their chairs, stretching their legs. A soft lull falls across the room. The glow of candles and hearthlight softens the edges of everything. The feast has done exactly what it was meant to do. Nourish the body, calm the mind, and draw every heart a little closer. Someone rises to gather the plates. Others offer to help, but the host waves them down with a gentle smile, wanting them to rest just a little longer. You sip the last of your warm cider, letting its sweetness linger. The conversation resumes in an even softer tone now. People speak of gratitude, of hopes for the coming season, of memories from their journeys. The room feels full and peaceful, as though it has taken a slow breath in and is not quite ready to exhale. You sit quietly for a moment, letting the scene imprint itself on your senses. This is the heart of Thanksgiving in the 19th century. Not grand, not loud, not marked by ceremony. Simply a gathering of hearts around a single table, warmed by shared food and shared life. And as the glow deepens, you feel yourself sinking gently into the calm that follows a well-earned feast. You remain at the table for a moment longer, letting the warmth of the feast settle into your limbs. The last traces of steam drift from the serving dishes, fading into the soft air. Conversation quiets to a gentle murmur. A few children yawn openly now, their earlier excitement dissolving into drowsy satisfaction. The adults lean back, their shoulders softened, their faces glowing in the candlelight. Gradually, the rhythm of the room shifts. The fullness of dinner yields to something more reflective, and you feel the entire household slide into a slower, dreamlike pace. The hostess rises quietly and begins gathering the last of the serving platters, though she moves without haste. She wants the moment to linger, not to be replaced too quickly. Others offer to help, but she smiles and shakes her head. The room feels peaceful, cocooned in its own quiet glow. A detail often noted in early American diaries touches your mind. After the main meal, families in the 19th century rarely jumped immediately to dessert. Instead, there was a lull, a gentle interlude in which people rested, told low-voiced stories, or simply watched the fire while their food settled. This pause allowed the feast to breathe. Tonight, you feel that breath ripple tenderly across the table. A small group drifts toward the parlor. The fire there burns low, humming with quiet comfort. You follow them, leaving your chair with slow, deliberate steps. Your belly feels warm, your heartbeat steady. The shift from bright feast to soft evening contemplation wraps around you like a familiar blanket. Someone places another log onto the embers. It catches slowly, filling the room with a curl of fragrant smoke. Shadows stretch gently along the walls. People settle into chairs and cushions as though returning to their natural places. A child curls at her mother's feet, wrapped in a small quilt. Her hair spills across her cheek like a tired little waterfall. You take a seat on a cushioned bench. The fabric is soft, faintly scented with lavender from storage. As you sink into it, a wave of calm spreads across your ribs, flowing outward. An older man clears his throat softly. He begins talking about the way Thanksgiving has changed over the years, not as a lecture, but as a quiet musing. He remembers how his grandparents celebrated with simpler dishes, fewer guests, more prayer, and less bustle. He notes how traditions shift naturally, like rivers winding slowly across the land. His voice reminds you of a thoughtful idea often explored by researchers. The 19th century was a period in which Thanksgiving slowly took shape, each household repeating certain rituals year after year, until patterns became familiar, then shared, then nearly universal. Some families held fast to the customs of their parents. Others experimented, adding new foods, new songs, or new gestures. Tonight, you see that evolution unfolding quietly, subtly, without anyone naming it. A young woman, sitting cross-legged near the hearth, listens with a thoughtful expression. She mentions how her own family never roasted goose until they moved inland, following advice from a neighbor who swore it cooked better than turkey. Her comment sparks gentle amusement. Someone teases her about becoming a goose enthusiast. She laughs, brushing aside the playful remark with a wave of her hand. Nearby, two cousins speak softly about a tradition their mother introduced last year, a moment of gratitude shared in whispers before bed. Another group recalls how their aunt started baking a new kind of pie after learning a recipe from a traveler. They wonder, smiling, whether tonight's dessert will reveal a new surprise. You notice a child sitting at the edge of the room, absently spinning the wooden beads he received earlier as a gift. His fingers move slowly, dreamily. The beads clack faintly, creating a tiny rhythm that seems to blend with the steady crackle of the fire. A gentle conversation begins between two older women about the earliest Thanksgiving they can remember. One describes a snowy year when nearly everyone had to stay the night because the roads froze solid. The other recalls a year the harvest was so abundant they could hardly fit all the dishes on the table. Their memories unwind delicately, woven with laughter and soft sighs. A bit of charming household lore enters your thoughts. Many families believed that traditions became real only after they had been repeated 3 times. The first time was chance, the second was curiosity, and the third sealed it. You look around the room and wonder which small gestures tonight will one day become beloved rituals, passed down quietly for generations. Someone brings out a pot of warm cider. It steams gently in the low firelight. The scent is sweet and spiced, inviting everyone to take a small cup. You cradle yours between your palms, letting the warmth seep into your fingers. The flavor is mellow and soothing, the perfect companion for a restful evening. Then comes the sound everyone has been waiting for, the faint scrape of pie tins, the whisper of a door swinging open, the soft shuffling of footsteps returning from the kitchen. Dessert is ready. The hostess re-enters with a gentle smile, carrying a tray of pies that glisten faintly in the candlelight. Apple, pumpkin, cranberry, and a special one, fragrant with spices brought earlier by the immigrant family. She sets the tray on the table, with quiet pride. The room brightens with soft excitement. Children sit up straight, adults lean forward. You feel the mood lift just slightly, warmed by anticipation rather than hunger. Slices are served carefully. The apple pie glows golden with cinnamon. The pumpkin pie carries a deep, earthy sweetness. The cranberry pie shines with rich ruby tones, and the spiced pie releases an aroma unlike any other dish tonight. People murmur their delight, exchanging small looks of surprise and appreciation. A small boy takes his first bite and closes his eyes in bliss, announcing that he has discovered his new favorite food. Laughter ripples around him. A woman teases that he says the same thing every year, no matter which pie he tries first. As the room enjoys dessert, conversation grows even softer. People discuss how this year's feast compared to years past. They praise the pies, share gentle compliments, and offer quiet thanks. The atmosphere becomes almost dreamlike, as though wrapped in a warm, slow-moving cloud. Gradually, plates empty again. People sink deeper into their seats. Some rub their stomachs with exaggerated groans. Others simply smile with sleepy contentment. A few children begin nodding off, their eyelids fluttering. You sit quietly, letting your senses absorb everything. The scent of pie lingering in the room, the gentle glow of the fire, the rising quiet of satisfied guests, the soft cadence of voices winding down. Thanksgiving has nearly traced its full arc, from morning bustle to afternoon warmth, from lively conversation to reflective calm, from hearty feast to soft dessert. The day has begun to settle. You feel yourself growing heavier, your mind drifting gently. The room shifts into a peaceful stillness, preparing for the final tender moments of the holiday's long, glowing story. You rise from the bench slowly, feeling the soft weight of the meal and the warmth of the room settle deep into your limbs. The guests begin drifting away from the parlor in small waves, some returning to the dining room to help gather plates, others moving toward the bedroom hallway, their voices softened into murmurs by the calm of the late hour. You remain for a moment, listening to the quiet breathing of the house as it settles into its final rhythm of the night. The air feels different now, softer, dimmer, as though every sound has wrapped itself in a layer of wool. You make your way down the hallway and enter a small bedroom lit by a single oil lamp. The flame glows faintly, its reflection trembling in the glass pane. The room feels warm but still touched by the hush of nightfall. A detail often recorded in 19th century letters drifts gently into your mind. Guests who travelled far for Thanksgiving usually stayed the night, often sharing beds or bundling together under thick quilts on the floor. No one minded the closeness. In a world shaped by long distances and limited travel, nights like these turned crowded rooms into havens of comfort. Inside the bedroom, quilts lie folded neatly at the foot of the bed. Their colours are faded from years of washing, their patterns stitched with care by hands that likely repeated the same motions winter after winter. When you run your fingers across them, the fabric feels soft and slightly textured, warmed by the memory of countless seasons. A young woman prepares the bed by smoothing the top blanket and fluffing a small pillow stuffed with feathers. The pillow feels light and airy when she presses it gently. She places it carefully against the headboard, as though making the space ready for dreams. Nearby, a boy and his cousin talk quietly about the feast. Their voices rise and fall with the sleepy rhythm of children fighting exhaustion. One mentions the apple pie. The other insists the cranberry pie was better. Their debate drifts into a long yawn. Before long, both boys need to rub their eyes to stay awake. A small detail from family collections slips into your thoughts. Children in the early 1800s often slept bundled under quilts so heavy it took two hands to lift them. The weight offered warmth, yes, but also a gentle, calming pressure. You watch as the young woman helps the boys climb into the bed. She tucks the blanket around their shoulders with careful precision. The boys sigh with contentment as soon as the quilt settles over them. Across the hallway, a woman prepares a second room for visiting relatives. She places a ceramic pitcher filled with warm water beside the wash basin. Steam rises gently from its spout. She folds a towel and lays it next to the basin, smoothing its edges with a tired but tender gesture. You continue through the house, observing each quiet ritual that guides the night to its closing chapter. An older man sits near the hearth, polishing his spectacles before placing them into their small wooden case. A mother braids her daughter's hair loosely so it will not tangle during sleep. A teenage boy checks the latch on the window, making sure the cold night air will not find its way inside. As you pass another room, you hear soft laughter. Two women reminisce about past Thanksgivings, their voices dipping into warm, nostalgic tones. They recall moments from childhood, relatives long gone, small mishaps that have turned into cherished stories. The sound of their memories lifts gently into the air like the glow of the lamplight. A thoughtful idea often considered by researchers floats through your mind. Some believe the quiet hours after a holiday feast reveal the true character of family life more than the celebration itself. The shared labor, the easy conversations, the simple acts of caring, all create a deeper sense of unity. Watching the house settle now, you feel that truth resonate softly. You move toward another doorway, where a small girl sits on the floor with her new cornhusk doll. She rocks it gently in her arms, humming a soft tune that mirrors the lullaby her mother sang earlier. Her eyes grow heavy, but she refuses to let go of the doll. Her mother steps in quietly, lifting her into her arms with ease. The girl snuggles into her shoulder, surrendering at last to sleep. The house grows quieter still. You can hear the faint rustle of quilts, the soft groan of floorboards adjusting to the cool night air, the muted whisper of distant voices fading into stillness. The fire in the hearth burns low now, casting one last pool of warm light across the floor before settling into a gentle glow. You step outside for one final breath of fresh air. The yard has grown even colder. Frost glitters across the grass like tiny stars fallen from the sky. The moon has climbed higher, its pale light tracing soft silver edges along the barn roof and the bare branches of nearby trees. The world feels suspended, hushed, held in place by the peace of the night. You stand there quietly, absorbing the stillness. The events of the day settle into your mind. The morning bustle, the kitchen symphony, the neighborly exchanges, the music, the gathering, the debates, the feast, the lingering warmth of companionship. Each part of the day feels like a bead on a string, connected by the simple thread of gratitude. When you step back inside, the warmth greets you instantly. You return to the parlor and ease into a chair near the fading fire. The embers glow like a final whisper, soft and steady. You close your eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. The scents of the day linger faintly. Cinnamon, roasted meat, sweet cider, wool warmed by firelight. The house now rests, and so do you. The night deepens gently around you. The embers in the hearth sigh, settling into a soft bed of glowing orange. Each flicker of fading light seems to stretch time a little longer, slowing everything into a quiet, calming rhythm. You let your breath match that rhythm, smooth and unhurried, letting the last traces of the evening soften inside your chest. The bustle of the day feels distant now, like a warm memory drifting behind a thin curtain of sleep. The laughter, the voices, the footsteps across wooden floors all fade delicately into the background. Only the tender afterglow remains. The house feels wrapped in its own quilt of silence, layered with the scents of pies and warm bread, the echoes of soft conversations, the warmth of shared gratitude. You picture the fields outside resting under their frost, untouched and peaceful beneath the rising moon. The quiet land seems to breathe with you, slow and steady, carrying the hush of winter on its gentle exhale. That calm settles into your thoughts, smoothing away the last edges of wakefulness. Your limbs feel heavier now, pleasantly so, as though the weight of a thick quilt has settled over you. Your mind begins to drift in soft loops, replaying only the warmest fragments. A child's soft laugh, the glow of candles along the dining table, the slow notes of the fiddle drifting through the room earlier. Each memory floats gently, then dissolves like snowflakes touching warm skin. You allow your breaths to deepen. The world narrows to the soft crackle of the fire and the comforting stillness of the room. Your eyelids grow heavier with every passing second, resting lower and lower until they hover at the edge of sleep. You sink into the quiet, letting it wrap around you like a warm blanket. The night holds you safely, peacefully, completely.